Hi, I'm Carlin Borisenko. In early 2020, I was the knitting Democrat who accidentally went viral on the internet for going to a Trump rally and then left the party. I became the conservative darling, was on all the shows, traveled around the country, and then realized that conservatives were no better than Democrats. If there's one thing that I've learned, it's that both political tribes are two sides of the same coin. But it wasn't all bad. On my journey, I became obsessed with understanding the woke ideology and the culture war. I broke the story of the city of Seattle doing segregated training with its employees.
How bad has this stuff become? The city of Seattle has now put out, I'm not kidding you, this is according to Dr. Carolyn Borisenko, who's an organizational psychologist. The city of Seattle asked its white employees to voluntarily spend a day off in a training about their internalized racial superiority.
I broke the story that led to the first ever federal lawsuit against critical race theory in the schools. I broke the Coke Be Less White story, one of the biggest anti-woke stories of all time. It got over 30 million views. Coca-Cola's corporate headquarters even had to change their outgoing voicemail.
Throughout the past few days, you may have seen inaccurate reporting on the content of our recently launched diversity, equity, and inclusion training program.
I exposed the schools in Burlington, Vermont for grooming middle school children live on the internet. They called me an unwoke cult leader for that. And the Vermont Human Rights Commission slandered me publicly as being a hate channel. I even got called a hero in Breitbart for exposing that the Washington Post was writing a hit piece on Christopher Rufo. I have broken story after story after story about what's going on in the public schools, from Cambridge, Massachusetts, to autistic sex education, to the Department of Education in Michigan, literally training teachers all over the state how to groom children. I wrote a book called Actively Unwoke, the ultimate guide for fighting back against the woke insanity in your life. I host a podcast all about fighting back, and I'm downloading all of my knowledge to you on my Substack, carlin.substack.com. The world is a crazy place. We are literally surrounded by cults on all sides. On this show, we're going to do a deep dive into all aspects of the culture war, and I will show you the dark, dystopian underbellies on both sides. Here are the commitments I'll make to you. I will always tell you the truth. I will always bring you receipts. And if you stick with me, I promise you will see the world differently. Welcome to the cult. Please mount that like button for me and subscribe if you feel so inclined. Well, hey, everyone. Happy Thursday. Welcome to The Cult. The Cult is a stream that I do Monday through Friday at 5 p.m. where we talk about the culture war, what's going on in the world, the dark dystopian underbellies of both sides, because I think both sides are insane. I think the left is insane. I think the right is insane. And I think there's a lot of bullshit going on all over the place. And I am unafraid to talk about it and tell the truth about what I think is happening and show you guys, of course, the receipts that come with that. I want to do a little bit more of a laid back stream today, if I'm honest, because I've been kind of like in the background doing some, dare I say, emotional labor where I've had to think really hard. And so I was like, what the heck am I going to stream about today? Because like my brain was kind of just like fried by the time that I needed to figure out what we were going to stream about. And I was like, you know what? A whole bunch of people asked me about a month ago when this came out. They asked me to watch Lauren Southern's latest the video that she's released called The Last 5 Years. Now, if you go back, I did a full reaction stream. I think I did like a 3-part reaction to Lauren Southern's kind of like documentary that she released when she made a comeback about like her journey and specifically her experience being canceled by the right. And I got to tell you, I didn't really know much about Lauren Southern when I had heard of her, but I didn't know much about her until I watched that documentary. And I have to say, not only was I incredibly impressed just with Lauren Southern in general. I don't agree with her on everything, to be very clear, but I'm impressed with her production quality. I thought that was really good. I'm impressed with her storytelling. But I was also impressed with how she told the story of how ridiculous the conservative right can be sometimes, and particularly those in like the disaffected, like alt-right kind of like MAGA thing that was going on when Trump originally got elected, because I wasn't paying attention to this at that point. And so it was actually really interesting to hear her journey and what had happened to her and her friends on the right. And there were so many parallels between what she talked about in that documentary and what I experienced on the right, where as soon as I stopped saying the talking points that they were all desperate for me to say, I became like public enemy number one. And I think it's bullshit. And so I was really glad that she made that. Now, she made this documentary, or I guess I don't even know if I'll call it a documentary, but maybe just an explanation. Brian says, "Oh no, I hope you aren't all ripping her on divorce and making it personal." Well, that's not my intention at all. Because a lot of people sent this to me when it came out, and they said, "Carlin, you should watch this because she's talking about things that you would be interested in, and we know you like her anyway." And so I was like, I kind of put it on the back burner because I had a lot going on just then, and I was like, you know what, we're gonna save this one for a day where I just need something kind of easy to watch and react to. And so I think today is going to be that day. I've been doing a lot of emotional labor behind the scenes. My brain is fried. I just need something easy. And so that is what we're going to do today. However, in the course of the day, there's been some other breaking news that I want to make sure we hit on before we spend the bulk of the stream watching this Lauren Southern thing and talking about it. Now, the first thing is, if you are not subscribed to my Substack, which is Carlin, Karlyn .substack.com, you may have missed that last night I released a full synopsis and summary of this queer theology thing, complete with, I think, 13 different clips showing how crazy the queer theology training. We essentially, so on Fridays on the channel, what we do is we do a stream called Happy Hour. Happy Hour is when we watch a woke training from start to finish, and we have some beers and some drinks and some general revelry, and we talk about it, and we use it to understand what's going on the woke left. I do believe, and I'm actually serious about this, that people who attend Happy Hour on a regular basis know more about what's going on the woke left than like anyone else on the planet. You know more than the commentators, you know more than the pundits, you know them more than the people who are supposed to be experts in this. I really believe that we are like light years ahead of where the average person is on understanding this ideology, purely because we do the work of sitting our asses down and actually watching it and listening to it. Well, last Friday, we watched one of the craziest presentations I have ever seen in my life, and I've seen some crazy presentations. It was in a church. It had the progress flag, which is the trans flag mixed with the gay pride flag, on the church altar. And it was a full hour and a half presentation talking about kink and BDSM and gangbangs with the Holy Spirit as a way to commune with the divine and have experience greater transcendence in regards to God. And it was called Queer Theology. It was presented by a queer theology professor at the Toronto School of Theology. And I think most of us who were watching Happy Hour last week, and if you missed it, the stream is still on the channel. You can go back and experience how we all experience this in real time. I think we were all a little bit shocked at seeing a professor of theology encourage Christians in a church to go to a kinky Christian sex club. That did actually happen in the presentation, to encourage Christians to engage in bondage play and all that sort of stuff as a way to connect with God. That did actually happen, and I have the clips to prove it. And you can watch the clips on my Substack right now, which again is Carlyn, Karlyn .substack.com. Head into this article right here. Queer theology, don't watch it at work. I'm not joking about that not safe for work thing. Don't watch it at work. But I've got all the clips laid out for you so you don't have to do the same type of emotional labor we did. I explain them all. I give you the quotes so you can see exactly what was said and judge for yourself what you think, guys. Listen, when I do articles like this, I do not view it as my job to tell you what to think. I view it as my job to tell you what happened and to tell you what they said and to tell you what they meant by that. And I really do my best to be intellectually honest about what I'm telling you. I might write it with a little bit of a dry sense of humor or dry sarcasm, but I really do try to be intellectually honest about it. And so I want you to decide, is this something that you're comfortable with, or if this is something that you're not comfortable with? Don't worry, Beth, we're not watching it. I'm just talking about it. We're not watching it. Don't worry. Brian asks, I watched a few videos with RFK and didn't realize he was that woke. Do you have a stream or a video about it? Well, Brian, as you can see from the Substack, if you go over to my Substack, which is carlin.substack.com, I have a whole article about it. So that's one of the benefits of actually being subscribed to the Substack, which you can do for free. And you can go and read about it yourself. Or if you do want to support the work I'm doing, because of course, guys, I am completely funded by you. If you want to support the work I'm doing and keep me in business, you can fund the work I'm doing through a Substack subscription of $5 a month, $50 a year. I would greatly appreciate it. I've got some things coming up that I really, 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 really need fundraising for. And you know, I've been telling you guys I want to do these conference infiltrations. I want to actually be able to live stream what's going on at these crazy woke conferences that are coming up. Well, the fact of the matter is that I can't do that without your support. So if you believe in the work I'm doing and exposing what's going on in these presentations, then you haven't signed up for a subscription yet on my Substack, I would encourage you, make today the day. And it's a great month to do it because right now you can get a subscription at $5 a month, $50 a year. But because I'm not getting the subscriptions that I need coming in, this is just reality, guys. This is economics. I am going to be raising the prices of the Substack at the end of the month. So I said to you guys about a month ago, I needed to hit a certain level to be able to do the work I wanted to do. Sadly, and there are a lot of reasons for this. One of the reasons is I was away for a week, but sadly, I'm not on track right now to meet my goal. And so I can meet the goal with one of two ways. Either I can get a whole bunch of subscriptions coming in at $5 a month, $50 a year, which would be great, or I can raise my prices. But if you sign up before I raise my prices, then you're going to be grandfathered in and you won't be impacted at all. Won't that be great? So, choice is yours. And guys, let me say this too. The biggest bumps that I've had in paid subscriptions on my Substack for the amount of work, the amount of hours that I put into this, the biggest bumps that I've had are when I do videos saying I'm going to fucking quit because you guys don't value what I do. I don't want to have to threaten to quit to get you guys to support the work that you're consuming all the time, that you're sharing over the internet. Like, it's got to come from somewhere, guys. And if you don't want to do it, then it's simply not going to get done. And I'm going to go do consulting and stuff in organizations instead. And that's just reality. Oh my God, Beth. See, and here's the thing too. Beth, I am so appreciative of the support that I get from you because Beth is like just an awesome supporter. I love it. Thank you so much, Beth. I really am so appreciative. Beth shouldn't be bearing the burden for everyone, guys. So, I'm truly grateful. What a great way to start off the stream, Beth. You are truly the best, and I am so grateful. And I promise I will never make you watch Queer Theology again as my undying thank you for you. I really don't want to have to threaten to quit to get you guys to support my work. What I would instead prefer is if you guys said, you know what, Carlin, I read your work all the time. I visit the Substack all the time. I watch your streams. I know what you're doing is valuable. Here is $5 a month. I just don't think I'm asking too much because all of the money does get reinvested back into what I'm doing because I have no life. I basically do this and I knit and I don't do anything else. And so I need your help, guys. That's just the way it goes. And ain't nothing. I wish I could do everything for free. I wish my bank would say, Carlin, you don't need to pay your mortgage. It's cool. We got it. I really wish that was the case. But if I can't get support for what I'm doing, then I'm going to go have to do consulting to make up the difference. And that means I'm going to be spending less time doing this stuff with you, less time writing articles for the Substack, less time doing research, less time tracking down these presentations. By the time I found that Queer Theology presentation, one day after it was done, when less than 100 people had watched it, because I'm constantly spending time monitoring the space for new presentations like that. You guys don't see that, but that's what I'm doing behind the scenes. And the only way that I can do that is with your support. And of course, Kino, you are a fantastic supporter as well. I don't want to have the burden all on you. I would like to spread the burden around. That's all I'm saying. But I do appreciate it, guys. But the other thing I want to talk about before we jump into Lauren Southern is we have a cocaine update. Words I never thought I would say. So yesterday, we discussed on the stream that it was definitely, 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 definitely not Hunter Biden who brought the dime bag of cocaine into the White House. It was absolutely not Joe Biden's son that accidentally left his bag of cocaine at the White House. I don't know why we would think such a thing, but it absolutely was not true. Now, we read this article from the New York Post yesterday in which it had a map. Where was the map? Oh, no, that's Hunter Biden with his crack pipe. We don't need to see that. I need to see this one. So we read an article from the New York Post yesterday in which they had a detailed infographic that said, here was the location of the cocaine. And we talked about the fact that the White House is claiming there were just no security cameras in the vicinity of the cocaine. And therefore, it would be impossible to determine who actually brought the cocaine into the White House. Okay? They know, but today we have an update because now it seems as though the White House may not have been all that honest about where the cocaine was found, or maybe they just want us thinking the cocaine was found in a different location. I mean, I'm sure the details, maybe it was actually in the original location, maybe it was in the new location. I don't know, but we have a new update from the New York Post saying White House cocaine was not found where the New York Post originally said it was found, but instead it was found near the White House Situation Room. And I am sure that the White House would have absolutely zero security cameras near the White House Situation Room. And of course, the administration can't rule out Hunter Biden, although we definitely know it absolutely could not have been Hunter Biden. But let's read. A bag of cocaine found in the West Wing of the White House on Sunday was located near the Situation Room and one floor below the Oval Office as the Biden administration spokesperson declined to rule out first son Hunter Biden as the source of the illicit drug. The dime-size drug bag found Sunday night in an entrance area cubby located between a foyer and a lobby area near where some official vehicles park, such as the vice presidential limo. Now, does anyone find it a little bit suspicious that just yesterday we had a detailed map from the Washington Post saying this is the location of the cocaine? And now, and it definitely was not Hunter Biden. Absolutely not. Just because Hunter Biden would get thrown in jail for violating whatever agreement he came to with the IRS, if he had a dime bag of cocaine in the White House, it absolutely could not have been Hunter Biden, okay? But does anyone find it a little suspicious that yesterday we have this very detailed map and today they're saying, oh, our bad. It wasn't in this random cubby hole that Hunter Biden sometimes used. Do you know where the cocaine actually was? Near the White House Situation Room, near the entrance that Kamala Harris uses. Did they just leave that detail out the other day? I mean, we watched Corinne Jean-Pierre do a really deflective press briefing where she didn't answer any questions. Did she just leave that detail out? It kind of seems a little weird to me that all of a sudden, out of nowhere, we're talking about, maybe it was where the vice president was. Did you ever think of that? Interesting. Kino says, the whole thing is BS. Who found the blow sugar? A small child on a school trip to the White House? I don't know about that, Kino, but thank you for the super chat. I appreciate it. And then Murphy's Pool confessing it was mine. Well, when did you go on a West Wing tour, Murphy's Pool? Let's continue. An official close to the matter previously told the Post that the cubby is used by both White House employees and visitors to store phones and personal items that are not taken into the other parts of the complex. The basement entrance is one of two to the West Wing and is located on the same level as the Situation Room. So I'm sure there are no security cameras who could have possibly captured who brought the cocaine near the Situation Room. The other entrance, located on the first floor, leads to a more formal lobby from the Roosevelt Room, Cabinet Room, and Oval Office. And there we have the illustration of the dime bag of cocaine. But you know what I find especially interesting? That the New York Post used this specific picture. I find it especially interesting that the New York Post used this specific picture, and I will tell you why in a second. And you guys are being so nice with the super chats right now. Can you just please sign up for the Substack? I appreciate the super chats too, though. Thank you so much, guys. I really do appreciate it. AZ Buckeye Girl, thank you. I thought of you doing something. The thought of you doing something else is terrifying to me. Well, I can't be left to my own devices, AZ Girl, but I really do appreciate it. Thank you so much. And then Kino Review says, watch them legalize medical cocaine after all this. It would not surprise me at all. But I find it really interesting that the New York Post chose to use this image of President Biden and the First Lady were gone during the incident. Blah, 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 blah. I don't know exactly when this photo was taken, but what I do know is that there is a video with this photo that kind of seems, man. Oh, hang on. Hang on. It's getting like really loud on my screen right now. Ah, it's so loud. Okay. What I do know is interesting is this is a video that was taken at the same time as that photo was taken, and it absolutely does not show Hunter Biden doing a bump of cocaine on the White House balcony around children. I mean, like, look at this. Seriously. New York Post article talking about cocaine. Hunter Biden is looking very gleeful there, holding a child. And then exactly the same outfits on everyone. Video from C-SPAN kind of looks like Hunter Biden's definitely not doing a bump of cocaine on the White House balcony with the child, or with the children, rather. But let's also check in with MSNBC. MSNBC has got some crack reporting on this. Let's listen to what they had to say. I just need to set the sound up real quick. 44 seconds.
It's down near the Situation Room, right off West Executive, down below. And normal people, just average people, just can't get in there, even with the entry from the Northwest Gate.
Well, let me bring you up to date with the reporting that I have. What we have learned is that there are, in fact, two West Wing entrances. You know that, I know that, but for the benefit of our audience. And now the investigation has progressed, and so they're saying the West Executive entrance, which, as you noted, is closer to the Situation Room and closer to the Navy mess, where there's the facilities for food and so forth. It is also next to West Executive Drive. That's where, for example, the vice president's vehicle is parked.
Kelly, the big change is where.
Oh, is it? Is that where the vice president's vehicle is parked? Is it? Now, I think it's no secret. I think it's no secret at all that Kamala Harris, not the most popular politician in the world. When Kamala Harris was running for president in 2020, Kamala Harris got exactly 0 electoral votes. Tulsi Gabbard got more electoral votes than Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris has been a pain in the ass to the Biden administration the entire time they've been in office. Kamala Harris has a ridiculous amount of turnover coming out of the vice president's office, which means no one wants to effing work with her because she's a GD nightmare. And God knows no one actually wants to vote for her. And yet, she still, for some reason, is on Joe Biden's ticket. And we know that because if we go to the Biden website, it's going to be the Biden Harris campaign, blah, 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 whatever, whatever. They're pretending they're the very best of friends. But I'm just wondering, I'm just going to throw out a crazy idea. It's probably a conspiracy theory. I'm probably wrong. I want everyone to fact check me and hold me accountable. Does anyone think that it might be possible that perhaps the White House is setting up Kamala Harris to take the fall for Joe Biden's son, who absolutely, definitely did not bring cocaine into the White House, even though we definitely don't have a video that definitely, absolutely does not show Hunter Biden doing a bump of cocaine on the White House balcony. Does anyone think it's within the realm of possibility that maybe they're pulling some shenanigans to say, oh no, the cocaine wasn't on that floor where Hunter Biden had access to. The cocaine was only on the floor that Kamala Harris had access to after they'd already reported where the cocaine was found, in order to maybe throw Kamala's ass off the ticket and maybe bring in someone else who might be a little bit more appealing and, dare I say, likable. Probably a conspiracy theory. I know, thinking about politics every day can drive you crazy. You start, doing the thing where you've got all the strings and the markers and all this stuff. I'm probably wrong. I just want us to think about it. Just put it in your back pocket. We'll have to see. It absolutely could be chicanery. It could be chicanery, it could be shenanigans, it could be any number of things, but what we know for sure is it definitely, definitely, definitely was not Hunter Biden who brought cocaine into the White House, okay? All right, guys, that is my update on the cocaine Kamala situation. And now let's get into our orders of business, shall we? Because what I want to do for the rest of the stream, and again, we're taking it a little bit easy today on the stream, is I want to watch Lauren Southern's video the last 5 years, because a lot of you sent it to me when it came out and said, Carlin, you really need to watch this video. And I was like, I don't have time for that shit. Pork Fest is here. I'm getting ready for Pork Fest. And that was actually true. I was like straight out getting ready for Pork Fest. It was crazy. But I do have some time now and I need something a little bit lax on the brain. Not that I'm sure, like, I think Lauren Southern is like, she makes good points, but it's just easier for me to react to this sort of thing. I don't have to think about, Marxism and policies and laws and all sorts of things. It's just a little bit easier. All right. I'm not trying to ding Lauren Southern at all, but I want to watch this video. Now, I want to know first, how many, let me do a poll in the chat. Let me see. Have you watched this video? Yes, no. And while you guys are answering the poll that I just put in the chat, I want to take this super chat from Kino Reviews. Thank you, Kino. How much do you want to bet they're going to blame Trump for this money? For the cocaine, or for, they blame Trump for everything. So, I'm sure they're going to try to find a way to blame Trump for sure. I really have no idea what this Lauren Southern video is about, by the way. Like, I know it's about her husband or like her divorce or something. That's pretty much all that I've watched of it. So we're gonna discover this together, I think. And it looks like 60% of you have not seen the video, 40% of you have. Well, I hope I can provide some additional commentary or insights for those 40% of you who have already seen it. Oh yeah, exactly. They're gonna say it was Don Jr.'s blow. You're right. You're right. But I do want to sit back and watch it, guys. I appreciate you indulging me here. Let me just make sure I have the sound set up so we can all actually hear what the video says. In the meantime, please make sure you have mounted that like button for me. Again, I do go live Monday through Friday at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. So you can always find me on the channel. Tomorrow is happy hour, of course, because tomorrow is Friday. So tomorrow we will be watching a woke training from start to finish. I don't know what the training is yet because I haven't decided. But we will be watching something at 5 p.m. Grab your beer of choice. Come hang out. It's going to be a great time. And then on Saturday, we do, of course, have Socialism Saturday at 6 p.m. We go live a little bit later on Saturday just because it's my weekend too. I got other things I need to do. But we will be doing Socialism Saturday at 6 p.m. Also, by the way, I just found out that there will be a live Haymarket Books presentation about transgender Marxism coming up in about 10 days. So that'll be fun. Anyway, mount that like button for me, guys. Mounting the like. There is a huge discrepancy between the amount of people watching right now and the amount of people who have mounted that like button. Come on, guys. When you mount the like button, you tell other people to come and join us on the stream. You make it more likely that YouTube is going to recommend the stream, all that good stuff. I need to see a whole bunch more likes. Come on. I'm going to sit here. I'm going to do my teacher waiting. There is a massive discrepancy between the amount of people watching the stream right now and the amount of people who have mounted that like button. I'm not trying to make anyone feel guilty. I'm just saying. And I do want to say a big shout out to everyone watching over on Rumble. I'm popping out the Rumble chat now. So if you are watching on Rumble, first of all, thank you for watching me on Rumble. I do really appreciate it. But I will be able to see your chats as well now, and I do appreciate you guys tuning in. Please make sure you are subscribed on Rumble. If you're not on YouTube, I also broadcast on Odyssey. I broadcast on Rockfin. I think I'm even on Twitter and Gitter and maybe a couple other places. But definitely make sure you are subscribed on alternative platforms. And all right, the like level is starting to come up, so I do appreciate that, guys. Maybe like a little bit more. That would be pretty great. But I do appreciate it. All right, let's get this party started, guys. We are watching the Lauren Southern's video, the last 5 years, about her life, about her divorce. I will provide commentary on what I think about it and what she's experienced. And I'm just interested to kind of like hear about it just again because I heard about it from so many people. And I want to say this. I don't really consider this like a nitwit stream. To be honest, it is not my intention to be bitchy on this stream. I'm not saying I won't be bitchy, but it's not my intention to like rip on Lauren Southern. I mean, my perception of this is that she is telling an authentic story, and I think we need to value that and appreciate that. And I have a great respect for people who do this because it is not easy. It is not easy to share your life with millions of strangers on the internet, or hundreds of thousands of strangers, or tens of thousands of strangers, or 1,000 strangers, or any number of it is not easy to share personal details about your life on the internet. And there is always a danger of it getting ripped out of context and twisted and used against you. And so I say that from personal experience, and but like I also think it's actually really important for people to do this. Part of the reason that I try to be authentic on my channel and I have shared so much about my life, even though there are things you guys don't know too, but like I really do think it's important that we talk about the human experience, the ups and downs, the highs and lows, the goods and bads, because life isn't perfect. And there's not a single one of you that is going to go through life without experiencing trauma, without experiencing pain, without experiencing heartbreak, without experiencing hurt and anger and sadness and betrayal. There is not a single person here who is going to have just a perfect, beautiful life, no matter if you present it that way or not. And I do think that it is important that we talk about these things because As someone who has had I've had massive highs, I've also had massive lows, and I got to tell you, when I've had my lows, it was helpful to know that other people had had those lows before and they had made it through, and I wanted to know how they made it through, and I wanted to know, like, what was going through their mind, how they perceived the world, how they handled it. I think that these things are really important. And in order to do them, we have to pull down the facade. We have to pull down, like, the pretense that we put out there. But when you do that, you help a lot of people who are in the same situation. Now, you also give your enemies ammunition, which sucks. It sucks really bad. But there's a balance to that, in that you can literally save people's lives. I'm not exaggerating. You can literally save people's lives by talking about your struggles, how you got through them. And so my hat is figuratively, not literally, but figuratively off to Lauren Southern for doing this and for putting herself out there. She didn't have to do it. She was under no obligation to do it. Lauren, I salute you. Thank you. And let's get this party started.
All right. Lauren is in the woods again, which means this is going to be a wild ride of a video. So sit down, get some tea, some wine, something stronger, whatever works for you. I have a long story to tell, one I've avoided for far too long. Avoided because I hadn't yet processed it yet, and I hadn't really understood the changes that I needed to make to my life and my soul as a result of living it. And I think I'm finally at a place where I'm ready to tell you all. So, one of the most deeply uncomfortable things in life is to live in contradiction. It eats away at you until you either decide to give up on morality and structure, or until you decide to destroy the contradictions that you have in your life. I've spent the last few months, more like years, living in contradiction and trying to get out of it. My first whole truth video that I made was an attempt to do that with regard to my political career. All the things that I had seen there that didn't quite line up to the public perception of that world I was involved in. But this video, this one is a lot more difficult to talk about because it's about my ideals for my own personal life being painfully contradicted by reality. I won't pretend that this is the whole truth about my personal life, because no one will ever know that about anyone, but it is a large part of the truth that I feel I have a moral obligation to tell you all, given my platform. When I met with Professor Jordan Peterson a few weeks ago for dinner, when he came to Vancouver to do his show, we talked a little bit about what had been going on in my life the last few years, and he gave me an excellent piece of advice, saying, one of the easiest ways to turn your life around, or really anyone's life around, is just not to lie. Even white lies and omissions can lead you down dark paths. And well, your Twitter feed gets pretty wacky, Dr. Peterson. He is certainly a bastion of simple moral truths that we seemingly always forget, and a very, very kind man. A lot of the things I'm going to talk about today, as I mentioned earlier, are things that took me a long time to process before being ready to share them publicly. And some of them I really didn't want to share at all, because I know that public statements about private events in your life inevitably lead to people demanding receipts. I have the receipts for everything I'm going to say, but due to wanting to protect the privacy of other people, I am not going to just splash them up on screen. In fact, I'm probably going to be more vague about some things than you'd like, just to keep everyone's privacy and dignity intact. This is my real life, not some e-drama hit piece on another creator. If there are people or journalists in the space I trust who want to privately verify information, I will do my best to cooperate. For now, just know that if I say something, I can prove it. I say that because, believe me, this story is stranger than fiction. It really is. It's somewhere between a fever dream and a deeply ironic
By the way, I absolutely believe Lauren Southern when she says she has the receipts. She's always brought the receipts before. Like, the whole truth video was filled with receipts. And so the thing, and I agree with her not necessarily showing them on this one, because Lauren Southern has no, so far as I understand, I could be wrong, Lauren Southern has no reason to do this video other than to share her story, right? And so it's kind of like, why would she lie about it? sort of thing when she has a pretty clear track record of having receipts for these things? Why would this be the thing that she lies about? That doesn't make sense to me. Are subtitles available? Sadly not. I tried to turn them on and they're not available, so I do apologize for that. But it's the way it goes sometimes. I apologize, guys.
Tragicomedy. At sometimes it feels like it was made perfectly to give maximum schadenfreude to people who might hate me. But its lessons, if there is one, is that God really, really works in mysterious ways.
Ain't
Because
that the
despite
truth?
how
Ain't that the
much
truth?
pain I'm going to talk about in this video, despite how sad it's all going to seem, it's not a tragedy overall. It really is not a sad story in the end. But it does begin with tragedy, and that tragedy is separation. I am no longer married, and not by choice. I've thought long and hard about how to talk about this because it's not easy for anyone. This is like my fourth, maybe even fifth time filming this video because, quite frankly, I cried way too much the first few times I did. And that's not stuff I want immortalized on the internet. And I've only really talked about this story deeply with a small number of friends and family before now. And one of those friends observed correctly that no one goes into marriage thinking that they are going to get divorced. And that's true, but if you wanted to go the whole facts don't care about your feelings route, I could easily point out that nearly 50% of all marriages end in divorce. However, that does not change the reality that when you are wearing a white dress or a tuxedo and either watching someone walk down that aisle or walking down it yourself, you always think of divorce as something that happens to other people. It could never happen to you. But it did. My husband left me. If any fact does not care about my feelings, it is that one. Now, many of you might hear me say this and
Wow.
still wonder why I'm going to talk about this at all, even if it's true. I don't blame you. There was a time when I myself would have asked, what kind of unstable narcissist splashes the details of their wedding and separation all over the internet? Part of me still would rather not talk about any of this. I have clearly avoided it for 2 years, but for better or for worse, I am a public figure, and if I take my ring off, as I should have a long while ago, people are going to have questions. And if I don't tell this story, it is very possible that someone with little to no empathy for me will, as often happens on the internet. Or
Ain't
rather,
that the
tell a
fucking truth?
garbled and inaccurate version of it.
Ain't that the fucking truth? Ain't that the truth? So what she just said is like, I have to tell this story because if I don't, someone else is going to tell you a bullshit, twisted out of context version of this story in order to like destroy me on the internet. And I don't want that. So you're going to hear it from me. And I've experienced this, man. Listen, so with my friend, I've been dragged a lot on the internet for my friend that went to prison for a crime he didn't commit that he pled guilty to because he was convinced that he had to by his fucking lawyers. I have never kept that a secret. There's never been one moment in my either private life or my life as I guess kind of a quote unquote public figure that I kept it a secret that I had a friend that went to prison for a crime he didn't commit. My entire family knew about this. My friends knew about it. I posted about it on the internet. We made fun of it on the internet. I coped through 8 years of supporting him in prison by being ridiculous about it. Like, I mean, I never kept it. I was very honest with my locals community about it. We talked about it in some of our community Zooms where I said I think the prison like industrial complex is bullshit and the justice system is bullshit because my friend went to prison for a crime that I damn well know he didn't commit and he had to plead guilty to it, else he would have been in prison for the rest of his damn life. And so I never hid that story, but I also never proactively told it. And the reason I never like let me tell you about the story of the time my friend went to prison for a crime he didn't commit. Like it was like it wasn't it there was no reason for me to tell it, to be honest. Like at the point that I became like quote unquote like internet quasi famous, there was like I wasn't even speaking to him anymore. And there was no bad blood, there was no animosity. It's just that like life goes on. I hadn't even really talked to him in like 5 years. I wasn't thinking about him at all. And so like it never occurred to me to do a video or to talk about it because it wasn't a part of my current experience at all. And so then what happened? Someone that I trusted went through 15 years of my social media history because he's an untalented narcissist that can't do anything on his own merits without trying to destroy other people. And he found evidence that, oh my God, Carlin was connected to someone who went to prison, and then splashed it all over the fucking internet, doxed my friend to the point where he had people calling his current place of employment trying to get him fired after he had already been to prison, already suffered enough, what had gotten out, was moving on with his life, was like just being a private fucking person. I had some asshole to get revenge against me go through my entire social media history to dox my friend in order to get his like sick fucking twisted narcissistic revenge against me. And looking back on it, I don't know how I could have handled the situation any differently, because there was no reason for me to publicly make a video like, "Let me talk to you about this really fucked up thing that happened to my friend." There was no reason for me to do that. But at the same time, like, me not being that, like, proactive about it led to other people that were malicious, bad actors who are now pretending they're like white knights on the internet that are going to save everyone, and they aren't even really doing anything. It led to them taking that information, some that I had given them in private, in confidence, because it was back when we were still friends, and taking it and twisting it and using it against me. And not only using it against me, but doxing my friend, who was a private person, who wasn't a public person on the internet at all, for his sick. Well, yes, Queen Queerin, for sure. Yes. So I completely understand. I guess what I'm saying is, and maybe I'm getting some feelings out, but I guess what I'm saying is I understand why Lauren Southern is doing this, and and I mean, I guess like that whole incident really taught me a lot about people and the depths that people will sink to when they are desperate to be internet famous, but have absolutely no talent or skill or intelligence of their own to rely on to do it. So, what they have to do instead is destroy other people for clout and fucking clicks. So, I get where she's coming from with this. I really do.
It in order to hurt or discredit me. And painful reality is already bad enough without having to correct a more painful lie. But that's not the only
Oh,
reason I want to talk
hang
about
on.
this.
I think I missed a super chat, and I apologize if I missed a super chat. Shauna, thank you. Red Pill Godfather Rolo spread lies about her despite the receipts, and their Fuentes space is saying she's sleeping with Tim Pool. She's not sleeping with Tim Pool. That's bullshit. And apparently have a secret love child with Destiny. The nonsense this woman has seen. I mean, I really feel for her. I really do. And this is part of why I wanted to watch this, is I feel like for some weird reason I have so many like life parallels with Lauren Southern. Like Lauren Southern and I are very different people. Lauren Southern and I have very different values, I'll tell you that. But like I feel like I understand her, and I feel like I understand a lot of the things that she's been through, because a lot of those things have happened to me, and they've happened to me on a much smaller scale than they've happened to Lauren Southern. And so I really feel for her, because I know the absolute living, breathing hell that I went through for 2 years, and I cannot imagine what she has to experience. And so, because it's just on a scale that's so much larger than the one I'm on. So I really do feel for her.
Today. I also feel the need to talk about it because I know how many young men and women are like me who grew up in conservative Christian households and are desperate to experience marriage, or at least what they think experiencing marriage is, without realizing what it actually entails. And by doing what most influencers do best, omitting the difficult details of my life, not only am I living in a painful contradiction myself, I am denying what may provide some important truth to my audience. Something I have always promised you guys, but failed to deliver here for far too long because it has been a personally difficult truth to tell myself. We all like to talk about owning people with hard facts and logic until those hard facts own us. I find far too often online we portray marriage the same way that Disney movies do, as the end of the story.
Oh,
You've
isn't
made
that the
it.
truth?
The adventure is complete.
Ain't that the truth? Let me tell you what, as someone who's been married almost 12 years now, like, marriage ain't the end of the story. Like, and it's funny, there's research to say that the more money you spend on your wedding, the more likely you are to get divorced, because like you're treating it as like this big fairy tale thing, and it's kind of like you're not really ready for what real marriage is. I'm sorry. Like, marriage is like ups and downs and fucking compromises, and like, you know, it's about being with someone who maybe you were like had a very different appearance when you married them, and then they get a little bit older and they get a little bit bigger and all this stuff, and like, oh, guess what, you're still married to them. And it's like when you're in it, it's like not that big of a deal, right? But I think for some people it's like, if they married like the young hot blonde, they kind of expect the blonde to always be young and hot, and guess what, that's just not the way it works, man. Life has other plans for that. So I definitely I agree with her perspective on that. It's not as Marriage takes work, and it takes compromise, and it takes partnership, and there will be times when you are more angry at your spouse than you can even deal with. There will be times when you hate your spouse. You can like love them and hate them at the same time. It's like one of those. And and there will be times when you want to give up. And some people do give up. And I don't begrudge anyone who says, you know what, this is just not for me. This didn't work out. I did not like when Steven Crowder said I picked wrong about my wife. I didn't like that. But like I don't think that there's like some marriages are my parent. Okay, so fun fact, this video is going to take forever because I'm just going to keep telling stories. I posted about this on Twitter, but I'll share it with you guys as well. Fun fact, this is my mother's wedding jewelry. I received this in the mail yesterday. I had all sorts of feelings about receiving my mother's wedding jewelry in the mail yesterday. The reason that I received my mother's wedding jewelry in the mail yesterday is because after almost 50 years together, 50, my mother and father decided to get a divorce. And this was sprung on me like towards the end of last year. And to be quite frank, they probably should have gotten a divorce a while ago. I didn't really feel either way about it, to be honest. And then there was like a whole goddamn rigmarole of like my mother like texting me these passive aggressive things about my father, and my mother being pissed because my father wasn't moving out of the house fast enough and all this shit. And it's like, and it's just, it's weird. But like, I guess I tell you that story to say like, and by the way, for people saying you're sorry, like, I'm kind of numb to the whole thing, to be honest, because I feel like my parents should have gotten divorced a long time ago. In fact, I remember probably 10, 15 years ago saying to my mother, "You need to divorce my father." Like, and it, like it maybe wasn't like 10 years ago or something, and they just didn't do it. And like, you can understand that because it's like they had been together for a long time. You're committed at a certain point, but I guess I'm saying that like not all relationships are meant to last forever. And so if you want to be in marriage, you have to make compromises to make it work, but you have to want to make it work. Um, your desire to be in a functional relationship with your spouse has to be stronger than whatever animosity you have towards them for whatever mistake they made or whatever they did. And some people can weather it and some people can't. And I don't think that I'm not saying that one is better than the other or whatever. I just think like people need to face reality sometimes when it comes to marriage to know that it is not easy. Everyone will fight. You will have ups and downs, and then you need to make the choice about whether or not it's a path that you want to continue to go down. And yeah, I guess that's all I have for right now. Okay, let's keep going.
When you actually get married and you surround yourself in deep personal relationships with others who are, you learn very
Yes.
quickly
Hang
this
on,
is
hang on, hang on. This is such a great chat from Philosophist. Marriage should be much more of should be as much of not more of a friendship slash business relationship than a I mean, like I actually think this is like really on point. Like you have to be like friends with the person that you marry. If you're not like the romance doesn't last forever. It just doesn't. Like, love feels amazing when you first meet someone and you fall in love with them and you have all the butterflies and all this stuff. It is fucking incredible. But it doesn't last forever, man. Like, if you are not friends with your spouse, you are going to be screwed. If you can't have fun with your spouse and laugh with your spouse and, you know, just like talk about nothing and just like do silly shit and like all this stuff, if you can't do that, you are so screwed. It's not going to work. And it doesn't matter how attractive your spouse is, it doesn't matter how good they are in bed. If you are not friends, it's not going to work.
not the case. And that's worth talking about. However, before we get into that, we do need to talk about the facts and the feelings that led me here. So let's get into why my marriage went wrong. Let me preface this by saying I do not want to turn this into a political thing. This is not man versus woman or feminist versus patriarchy. This is or was my real life, and I am not trying to assassinate my ex husband's character. I am just trying to recount what really happened, what I actually experienced, and the impact it had on me and my child. I find that when people take to the internet to talk about and discuss anything regarding relationships, the modern tendency is for either side to concoct their villains, to make the man out to be some evil mastermind or the woman out to be a heartless femoid vampire. This is silliness and does not encapsulate real human relationships whatsoever. That being said, though, I won't lie, I definitely failed at being a heartless femoid vampire because those stories usually involve women who marry men for their money, their looks, their power, or even their fame. None of those things even slightly occurred to me as reasons to marry my husband. I married him because I loved him and because I wanted to dedicate the rest of my life to him and because we had the same values. He was staunchly conservative, Catholic, wanted a family, and said he wanted to grow old together once we had spent our youths raising those children. When I married him, I absolutely thought I had made the best decision of my entire life, as many do. Now, if you have followed me for long enough, you probably know that I love making impulsive decisions that seem like a good idea at the time, but start to show their downsides awfully quickly once it is too late, which is exactly what happened here. Marriage was this massive dream for me. I mean, despite my media antics, traveling around the world, building this career, I genuinely did want that stay at home wife life that so many LARP about online. I really was just so desperate for this life that I had in my head that I assumed my husband had in his head as well. Um, and as a result of that, I rushed into marriage. Like a college kid who picks up the Communist Manifesto and decides to join the revolution.
That's a funny comparison. She compares marriage to becoming a communist in college. That's funny. Shauna says, I think the tricky thing about marriage is when someone goes through an emotional or spiritual growth spurt, but the other partner doesn't. And a marriage that was once compatible is no longer that way. I mean, I think that there's truth to that. Oh shit, hang on. Broke my knitting. Oh my god, no. I think that there is some truth to that, Shauna, but I'll also say this. Like I mean, I think that my spiritual path might have actually saved my marriage, to be honest. The reason I say this is because what the fuck year was this? Probably about 5 years. It was 5 years into my marriage. It was 5 years in. And so I've talked about this before. My husband and I got married very, very quickly. And I love my husband to death. I will never leave my husband. I want to be very clear about that. Like I am deeply committed to my husband. And so like if I say like anything, I don't want anyone to have like the wrong impression about that. But my husband and I got married very quickly. We got married almost like it was it was like a week, no, it was like about a week shy of 6 months after the day we met. My husband and I met on May 14th, 2011. We got married on November 5th, 2011. It was very, very fast. Now, there were reasons for that. And I've talked about this publicly, so I don't mind saying it again. Like, I met my husband. Um, we were dating. I knew that I wanted to marry him on our second date. That is absolutely real. I knew I was going to marry him on our second date. And then about a month after I had already kind of like decided, "Oh, I'm going to marry this guy, I'm pretty sure." Then he got picked up by immigration because he's from Ukraine and he came here and he overstayed his visa. And he came here legally to, no matter what Lauren Witzke says, he came here legally, overstayed his visa, got picked up by immigration, was going to be deported. If he had been deported, he wouldn't have been able to come back to the US for 10 years. And so basically, I was like, well, I already knew I wanted to marry him anyway. If I don't marry him, he's going to get deported. Let's have an ill-considered wedding. And like I make that like about to be a little bit of a joke, but honestly, it was like the easiest decision I ever made in my life. It was so easy. And so we did. We got married. He did not get deported. Yay. Um he has so like 2 year like so after we got married, he was granted like a temporary permanent resident status because we hadn't been married for like 4 years or whatever by the time that immigration got around to processing it. 4 years after we got married, he was granted permanent resident alien status. So he has like a permanent green card. I tell this because people are like, "Oh, Caroline, you just had a green card marriage and blah, 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 blah." Well, guess what? If I had a green card marriage, my husband could have divorced me 8 years ago and still stayed in the US as a permanent alien. So that's not real. But I say this because we did get married very quickly. About 5 years into our marriage, I'm being honest, like, I'm not gonna say things were bad. They weren't bad. Things were a little rocky. And things I think were a little rocky because I was like pissed a lot. I'm gonna take responsibility for this. I was very, 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 very angry about a lot of things that I'm not gonna go into. I started going down a path of like spirituality and spiritual growth, and I went to Peru to do ayahuasca for the first time and all this stuff. And I gotta tell you, my husband has told me repeatedly that when I came back from Peru, when I went to Peru to do ayahuasca and I came back, I was a different person. And so my husband doesn't do the spiritual stuff that I do. My husband doesn't do like all this stuff. That's kind of my thing. It's not his. It's okay to have different interests, right? But he has told me that I was completely different when I came back. And so, in that respect, I do think that my spiritual path may have actually saved. I'm not saying we would have gotten a divorce otherwise. I don't necessarily think that's true, but like it absolutely dramatically improved our entire relationship. So I don't have any regrets about that. Anyway,
I simply never bothered to ask some of the most obvious questions, like, can this person deliver what they claim to want? Or can I trust their promises, in this case, vows? Or will reality simply break them into pieces? For any marriage, this is a question that cannot go unanswered. But as I was soon to learn, it was especially vital to know the answer in my case, because being married to me has its own unique challenges. The main one being, I am super, super controversial. And for someone with a respectable job like my husband had, that's a big problem. The thing is, though, calling it a respectable job is underselling the situation a bit. A lawyer is a respectable job. A doctor is a respectable job. You could even consider a teacher a respectable job. But for the most part, those respectable jobs do not require a security clearance. My husband's job did. And I know that there will be rampant speculation about what that means, but I really don't want to hurt his career any more than I may have already. by getting into the details of it.
Sorry, guys, I'm just adding this later, but I don't really know why I'm mincing my words here. Obviously, I do not want to hurt my ex's career, but at the same time, it's pretty damn obvious my ex worked for the feds. I know, enjoy the memes. It's all absurd and weird. He wasn't like head of right-wing investigations or anything like that. It was more of an innocuous role. But that whole apparatus, they know each other, they work amongst one another, and it sure as hell complicated things, to say the least. It's really hard for me to talk about all of this in general, which is why I have it all written down on paper,
She
putting
married
on
a
a
fucking
strong
Fed.
face, but I have spent way too much time living in fear.
You know what? We love who we love. I guess like Lauren Southern marrying a Fed is like God's way of smiling on us, I suppose. We love who we love. We can't help it. I'm not going to judge her for marrying a Fed. I might make fun of it a little bit, but I'm not going to judge her for marrying a Fed. We love who we love. Whatever.
It may sound ridiculous to some of you, but I do live in fear of the government for talking about stuff like this. I have suffered. My family have suffered as a result of this entanglement with the state and my activism. And I am a bit traumatized by it all, if I'm being honest. I have spent hours, days of my life with my newborn child in questioning sessions, wondering if I'll be allowed to see my family. I've been under active political investigation that I haven't talked about publicly, had the state detain me until I gave up all my tech devices and passwords to them, even during times when I had no involvement in politics at all. I've been barred from multiple countries, including Australia now. And after all of this happens to you, it becomes really difficult to discern what is and isn't just invented paranoia in your head. It becomes hard to tell what could be done to you next if you say the wrong thing and if you could hurt the people that you love more. You become aware that you're on government agencies' radar, but you don't know how much time or effort they are investing in messing with your life or psyche. And it has made me terrified to talk about almost anything these days. And at times, it has made it difficult for me to discern reality. So I hope you can all understand why I'm being so awkward and vague in a lot of this video. I'm a lot better now. I am, but it's still this like constant nagging fear in the back of my head. The Lauren Southern you knew, who started in activism, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed at 18, 19 years old, got the living shit beat out of her psychologically. But I am getting a lot better lately, and making this video is one of those big moments of getting out of my paranoia, conquering some of my fears. So I hope some of you can appreciate that and understand why, I'm beating around the bush with some topics in this video. This is a big step for me. But anyways, back to what I was saying.
I mean, all I will say is that pairing someone with a high-level security clearance with an activist who obviously has problems with almost every government around the world for her anti-government sentiments, that is going to be a nightmare no matter who the people are. And we both knew that going into dating, let alone marrying. We knew it would be tough. We discussed the possibility that he might either lose his job or forfeit any chance at advancement if he were to marry me due to my activism. In fact, that and the massive distance between us were two of the main reasons for me being apprehensive about dating him in the first place. I didn't want to live in Australia or complicate his life's work for that matter, and I told him so very clearly. And yet he claimed to care so deeply, so much for me, that he was willing to switch careers if he had to. He would move to Canada at the drop of a hat to be with me. And, that was one of those head over heels romantic moments that I think every girl wants to hear. The career, it's just not as important as you. I'm willing to give it up. And before you scoff, know this, he did mean it, because he did move to Canada to be with me and he did change jobs. And during his time here, we had some truly beautiful moments together, which I will never regret, the most important of which being our decision to get married and have a son. I wanted a son and a daughter. So did he. So really, looking at the situation at the time, it was like, what's the problem here? Well, the problem was that, like with most couples, people have honeymoon periods. And when ours ended and the more mundane life set in, I was actually pretty content with it. I was really happy with it. But for my husband, it seemed like the reality of losing his life's work was beginning to set in. And understandably so. To give up his home and job that he had spent every day of his life working towards, risked so much for, achieved all this status and respect, to just throw that away and be nobody, That just got harder and harder for him to cope with, especially once he started doing the more boring work he had in Canada and found it, frankly, intolerable. And it's not that I simply left him alone with these feelings. I did not. I did my best to comfort and make things easier for him. I obviously had some savings from doing YouTube before, and I used that to split rent, pay for groceries and life costs, and kind of take that burden off his shoulders whenever I could. Took care of the home, our child, both when I was pregnant and after I'd given birth, because that's what you do in a partnership. You give 100% of what you can to build up, the team. But it wasn't enough because the fact was he was still trapped in jobs that felt like dead ends after what he had given up before. So perhaps it is not surprising that a few months or so after I'd given birth, he accepted a new job in Australia, one that was closer to the kind of work that he had left behind. And when I say he accepted it, I mean without my input. He didn't consult me at all. He just announced one
Wow.
day that we were moving to Australia, which again, I
Wow.
understand.
Wow. I would be pissed beyond belief. Victor, I love you, but I would be pissed beyond belief if my husband accepted a job without telling me, even if it didn't require us to move or do anything. Like, and the reason for that is this. It is a fucking partnership, right? And it's like, I don't know, but especially if it involved fucking moving, like, I would be livid beyond belief if that ever happened. I mean, it's not as though, like, married people can't make decisions separately from each other, because you could like, we make decisions separately from each other all the time. Like, it's not like I go over, like, "Victor, here's what I'm doing in my business, and here are all the decisions," and I don't, like, do that, I don't ask permission from him, and he doesn't do the same for me. Like, and I tell him all the time, like, "You wanna go find another job, go find another fucking job, I don't care, but, like, you gotta make sure, like, we like, it's comparable to the job you have now, right? Like, it's not gonna, like, disrupt things too much. I mean, it is gonna disrupt things, and that needs to be, like, a discussion, at least. Um, but to just, like, accept a job and then announce you're gonna move from Canada to Australia and she doesn't get any input, F that.
When you feel as trapped as he clearly did, you will gnaw off your own leg, and telling your wife to pack a suitcase probably felt minor in comparison. But that does not change the fact that he had said we would live in Canada, and finding this out right after I had given birth and just started to rebuild my community support systems after such a chaotic change in my life came as quite a shock. All of which is to say, I was a little upset. A little upset he hadn't consulted me because I felt we should make these decisions together as a couple. And to be clear, I didn't actually refuse to go. I just told him I would have had an easier time supporting him in making that move if we had talked about it properly beforehand. Which, rather than kind of change his tune and take the approach that I wish we had in the first place of talking about it together, his response was to say I either make the move or he would divorce me. Now, when I made my wedding vows, I meant them, in sickness and in health, for as long as you both shall live, period. So hearing that divorce was even on the table for him was devastating and life-changing in its own right. Because from
And
my
over something
perspective,
like
the
a
entire
job.
point of being married was that you will not leave each other. You support each other through anything, no matter what. And because even thinking about the idea was too upsetting, let alone risking it actually happen, I ultimately decided to put my misgivings aside and simply made the trip to Australia with him. Although I did have friends and family telling me that these were not the pretenses I should be making a move like that under. And maybe it seems naive to you watching, and you can kind of see how the future is going to go here, but I was still bright-eyed and bushy-tailed with a child and a husband that I loved, and believed that that was just a one-time occurrence, that was a one-time threat. And our marriage certainly did not have an easier time in Australia. Getting in, as I've already explained before, was a nightmare for me, one which ultimately required me to give up my political career. Yet even without politics, I was already staring down the barrel of travel restrictions or similar issues. And all while my husband was not only seemingly ashamed of me, but paranoid that discovery of our marriage by certain individuals would impact his work at his new job. Even under the best possible circumstances, feelings like that would eventually curdle into resentment. And
Yep.
they did here. His resentment did not come from nowhere. His position undoubtedly suffered when his colleagues became aware that I was his wife, but even so, it was absolutely not healthy for either of us. He was forced to live with a wife who he increasingly saw as a millstone around his neck, whereas I was trapped alone in Australia with no family or friends and a husband who resented me. The low point of this all was probably lockdown, which for me was so traumatic that I have repressed large chunks of my memory. I cannot tell you guys how lonely and painful it was being stuck by myself in a big house all day with someone who, for weeks at a time, would hardly acknowledge me beyond a dismissive hello, or worse, just give me reminders of what absolute deadweight I was for his life and career. I mean, even going outside, the streets were mostly empty except a couple kangaroos. There weren't community events going on. I couldn't meet new people. It was like I was living in this eternal limbo in that country.
I mean, so it's like her marriage, it sounds like, was already like on the rocks, but this is definitely making me think about like how many marriages did all this lockdown bullshit destroy? Which is probably like for the people who are pushing the lockdown stuff, like it's a feature, not a bug to destroy marriages, I suppose. But like I can't, that would suck, man. That would suck real bad. I have a lot of empathy for her.
Tormented by the idea that my husband might leave us at any moment, particularly tormented because I still loved him, but also having left work to be a stay at home mom, I certainly did not have enough funds to support myself or our son if he were to do so, and no way to return home to my family because of government COVID restrictions at the time. I didn't want to get too political at this part of the video, um, but I really don't think people realize, certainly not governments, the absolute depths of darkness that lockdown brought to some of us. As I mentioned earlier, I filmed this section like 3 times and I cried the first few times. I'm finally at a point where I can read this without breaking down, but it was just completely horrific for me. And I don't think my mental health has even recovered to this day. As I said, can barely remember many of those months because I don't want to rekindle them in my mind. And make no mistake, I was trying, even though it was a pretty depressing situation to be in. I spent literally every day of my waking existence, desperately trying to think of ways to make my husband see me, to love me the way that he used to. If I just cooked dinner right, if I made the perfect dessert, the perfect breakfast, if I ironed enough of his shirts, if I made the right amount of romantic gestures, then maybe he would feel differently about me.
She was married to a narcissist, wasn't she? I've heard rumblings of this, but what it sounds like to me is that when she met her husband wooed her, told her, like, dreamed up stories about their future together, told her all of the amazing things that they were going to do together, everything she wanted to hear. That's the golden period. They probably had really great sex. She got like he probably liked that she was Lauren Southern, even though if he pretended he didn't like that it was Lauren Southern. But like they went through the golden period, and then when he became resentful of her, he started giving her the silent treatment and all that stuff, because narcissists have like 2 main ways that they will exert control over you. They will either get really angry and furious and do like crazy shit, or the more like insidious one is that they will completely lock down and give you the silent treatment to basically like what the narcissist does when they're giving the silent treatment is they make their partner feel like desperate to get back into that golden period, to get back into their like good graces and stuff like that. And their partner's like, what can we do to just make it amazing again? What can we do? What can we do? This used to be so great. And the narcissist is just like totally it's a control issue. It's to keep them in control. It's to keep it's to keep your partner chasing after you all of the time, so that they're getting like the constant attention. And she just wanted to be married, and she just wanted to have her husband, and now all of a sudden her husband is making her miserable, and then the lockdowns on top of it. It kind of sounds like she married a narcissist.
I really tried all of it, but nothing worked. It's clear to me now in retrospect that to my husband, our marriage was already over. And he was looking for every excuse, no matter how small, to end it in law as well as in fact, which might explain why I never so much has uttered the word divorce once when we were living together, and he brought it up easily over 100 times. And often over things that still make no sense to me to this day. But sense or no sense, I kept trying to fix whatever problems he would raise without regard for how possible they were because we were married. I think because he had acknowledged the threat to his career that marrying me would pose at the beginning of our relationship and seemingly accepted it, he never would use this as his reason for divorce, but it was something he brought up every day as a frustration.
No, narcissists will use whatever they can use against you, anything, and it doesn't need to make sense. And if it doesn't make sense, they will twist it out of context. They will do anything. It is absolutely like insidious what that disorder does to people. Shauna, thank you for the super chat. Yes, her husband sounds like classic narcissism. She doesn't use those words, but she talks about it later. Well, we're gonna keep an eye. I'm gonna basically be telling you guys every time I hear her talk about something that sounds like narcissism, I'll point it out.
All while pinning his divorce reasons on
hang on.
seemingly less important things.
Hang on. Sorry, I got another super chat from Shauna. Thank you, Shauna. He probably love bombed her until he was done with her. I think it's one of the most common things these women get deceived by. Well, I mean, it's not just women who get deceived by it. I mean, like we're guys, do you think that Prince Harry didn't get deceived by this too? This is exactly what Meghan Markle did to Prince Harry. Like she did the same thing. They had their golden period. She popped out a couple kids. She destroyed his relationship with the goddamn royal family. And now we're seeing Harry in this decline phase of their relationship where they are absolutely going to get divorced. It's only a matter of time because she doesn't want him anymore. He's not providing her with the fuel that she needs anymore. So it's not just women who get deceived by this, men get deceived by this too. It can happen to anyone.
One such complaint had to do with my ADHD. He told me he could not be with me unless I fixed it, like absolutely fixed it.
Come on.
So I tried. I went and I got officially diagnosed in Australia at a specified clinic. I began taking Vyvanse, which is like an ADHD stimulant drug. They've got others like Concerta, or you've probably heard of Ritalin. I started taking that daily to try to manage it. I understand even now how frustrating having a partner with ADHD can be, largely because it frustrates me to have it. But I did everything one can possibly do to try to manage it, and it still wasn't enough. I was repeatedly told that I was not making enough progress in that department. And it seems like a silly thing to be so important to me. It's, I've never really had it be an issue in the past. I've never even really had to take stimulants for it. But when it's your partner, the person you've married, that cares about something, it makes it really important to you as well. And if you have ever been made to feel worthless or unlovable for something that you can't change about yourself, you know how deep this pain can
Yep.
go, how much it fucking sucks.
He didn't really care about the ADHD. I'm going to tell you that right now. Everyday Therapist is pointing out he found another excuse to devalue her. It wasn't about the ADHD. The ADHD was just an excuse to make her feel like garbage, which is how he fed his narcissism.
And it has taken me a long, long, long time to get over that properly. I'm someone who very much has the mindset of trying to be hyper introspective of what I could have done wrong in a situation, try to take maximum responsibility so I have maximum capacity to fix a problem. But no matter how much stimulants I took, I ultimately cannot change the way that my brain works, the brain that I was born with. And having this desperate need to make this problem right made me cripplingly self-critical about my ADHD. I know that we make fun of therapy culture, but my therapist told me something that really turned this around, asking me point blank that if I wasn't deserving of love for my ADHD, then how could my son, who will likely have it as well, be deserving of love? And I cannot imagine a universe where that boy does not deserve every ounce of love I have in me. So with time, this has completely changed my perspective on the issue and been very healing. There are a lot of people I know with bizarre, strange minds that don't work like everyone else's that I absolutely love in this world and find incredible. Now, Well, I certainly saw glimpses of the abyss. I do not want to make it seem like our lives were hell 24/7. That wouldn't be fair or true to suggest that. The start of our relationship was nothing like what I'm describing now. Otherwise, why would I have entered it? But even when things did get dark, truly we did have good days. And I would both hoard the memories of those days like little flecks of gold and tell everyone who would listen
Golden
whenever
period.
they happened, because that was the only reality I wanted anyone to know in my marriage. It's the classic, you post all the best moments on Instagram so people see how happy you are. And I was convinced one way or another that I could make it be the only reality I knew in our marriage once I had just figured out how to fix everything. But never got to that point. And ironically, it was his threats that eventually paved the way for our relationship to finally end. During one of our bad periods, my husband told me to book a flight to Canada immediately because he was divorcing me. And I had listened, even though my
Wow.
savings were running out and flights out of Australia were nearly impossible to find. I somehow managed to get a flight. And because I knew I wouldn't have the money to book another one, and also because it might be years before another even existed, thanks to Australia's COVID policies, I didn't cancel it, even though obviously I spent every day up until the flight point working on things, begging him to fix our marriage. And we went back through that up and down period to an up phase where he didn't want to divorce me. So when two deaths in my family eventually happened to coincide with this flight I had booked, I decided to actually make the trip, my son in tow, with the full understanding that I would come back in 2 weeks. I had my flights booked back, all of that, once the funerals were over. After being so miserable with me for so long, you would think that my husband would welcome the chance to get me out of the house, right?
No, because he's a narcissist. And no matter what you do with a narcissist, you will not win. She was already in the devaluation period at this point. So how it goes with narcissism is like you meet the narcissist, you enter the golden period, everything is fucking glorious. The narcissist treats you like you are the only person in the world. Everything is about you. There is an obsession about you. They mirror your character traits so you feel like you two are like meant to be together. It is just it is the only relationship that you want, and that's all feeding the narcissist with positive fuel the entire time. But eventually you're going to enter a period called sustained devaluation, in which the narcissist is going to switch from treating you like you walk on water to treating you like you are dirt on the bottom of their shoe, and nothing you do. There is nothing that you can do. There is nothing that you can say. No matter what you do, it will be wrong and it will be used against you. And it doesn't matter if they need to lie. It doesn't matter if they need to make things up. It doesn't matter if they need to rewrite history. It does not matter. So it is no surprise to me at all that like he told her GTFO, and then when she went to GTFO, he maybe wasn't so open to that anymore. But we'll hear about that in a second. Shauna, thank you for the super chat. This is important. Women who are neurodivergent are much more likely to find themselves in abusive relationships. There's been studies. That does not surprise me at all, Shauna. Thank you for the super chat. And then Duke says that this is so helpful to hear. The confusion you are left with after being with a narcissist for years is unlike anything else. Oh man, I'll tell you what. I have had relationships of different types with at least two narcissists that I've identified. And it is a complete and total mind fuck. You question everything about yourself. You question your judgment. You question what you know is true. You question everything about what you did, what you could do differently, like everything. And it's not until you really recognize that there's nothing you could have done. There's really nothing you could have done. And you also can't save them, by the way. So many people try to save narcissists. They think if I just do the right thing, I'm going to save them and we're going to go back to the golden period and it's going to be better. You cannot save them. They have a disorder. They have a disorder that developed in childhood as a result of who their parents are, their genetics, and their upbringing. It has to be both. It has to have both nature and nurture. If you don't have the genetics for it, you will not develop narcissistic personality disorder. If you don't have the right type of childhood for it, you won't develop it. It has to be both. You cannot fix that. And the reason you can't fix that is the vast majority of narcissists are not self aware of what they are and can never become self aware of what they are. And the few that are self aware that they're narcissists don't think there's anything wrong with it. So there's nothing you can do to save them. And there's nothing you can do to change them. And there's nothing that you can do to make, they might give you respite periods where they're like, they treat you like shit for a little while, and then they give you glimpses of that golden period again, and you're like, oh my god, things are going back to normal, oh, we're going to get back to where we were. And then they use it to boom, hit you upside the head, not, well, sometimes literally, but most of the time like figuratively, because they're emotionally fucking with you, because that's what drives them. That knowing that they have that control, that they can give you those glimpses of that amazing experience again and then rip it all away and get the reaction that comes with that. That is a feature to them, not a bug. And they will do anything to get it. And it is just, I really like, if you've ever been in a relationship with a narcissist, if you've ever been friends with a narcissist, if you've ever had any type of thing with a narcissist, a business partnership with a narcissist, any of these things, I am so, so, so sorry, because I've been there too. And it is the most, it's quite something. It's quite something.
No. Instead, like everything else, my leaving for Canada became another reason to threaten.
Hang on, one more thing. Brooklyn Way, who I know has had a relationship with a narcissist, this community is how I got through this year. I hear you, Brooklyn Way. My community is how I made it through this as well, so I do appreciate that. Everyday Therapist says, I've had so many clients who are recovering from a narcissistic significant other. It is something else, man. It really is. Rottweiler, thank you for the super chat. I can relate. Not so long ago, I got a close friend with I got out of a close friendship with a malignant narcissist. Everything to a T, from love bombing to devaluation and discarding. It was starting to make me physically ill. I mean, the amount that it like even the strongest people in the world, the amount that it fucks with you, I've never experienced anything like it. I really haven't. So I'm sorry that happened to you, Rottweiler. Shauna says, if you manage to survive having a narcissist parent without becoming one, you have to completely rebuild your identity. Oh, yeah. Having a narcissist parent is like something else. That is a whole other thing. Thank you, Shauna, for the super chat.
Divorce. He said he needed the support in Australia, and our relationship was in such a bad spot that if I returned to Canada, he would simply have to end our marriage. Only this time, having not seen my family for so long, genuinely having funerals of extremely important people to me to attend, and perhaps no other chances for the foreseeable future to visit home. Honestly, my mom was in quite a bad mental health crisis after not seeing her grandson for so long. It was, and I was in a bad, much worse mental health crisis after feeling, quite frankly, deprived of love and people building me up as a human being.
You can tell this is very real for her. You can tell this is authentic. She's not, this is no bullshit. Philosophist, not to get off topic, but I found a Soviet adaptation of Lord of the Rings called Guardians of the Ring. It's hilarious. I'll put it in the Discord. Thank you, Philosophist, for that brief interlude. I appreciate it.
And I desperately needed to just see my friends and family for this short period before going back. So I told him I loved him. I'd be back in 2 weeks, but I had to go. And somehow he actually eventually agreed. He said he wouldn't divorce me if I went to go visit my family and friends, but that lasted until I landed in Canada, when he texted me and told me not to bother returning to Australia and that we should separate. And once again, I tried to change his mind. I spent thousands on counseling. I sent him basically all of the money I had left in my bank, as if it would reduce some of the stress on his part and show my commitment. I begged him to stay together. He didn't listen, and ultimately he told our counselor, my parents, and me that my ADHD was too much to handle, and that he no longer believed I could be the partner he needed in life. I held out hope for a very long time. In fact, I would say I simply refused to accept reality for a long time. I'm sure there'll be people reading this who have been left by a loved one, particularly if it was someone you had children with, who will understand the type of crippling heartbreak this induces. It feels like for the rest of your life, you'll have this chronic aching pain like a phantom limb, the entire foundation of your world swept away. To have that happen changes you forever. And my heart goes out to anyone watching this who has been in that situation before. I cannot say it enough. When I said I do at my wedding, any thoughts of any other man on the entire planet disappeared from my mind. Therefore, to lose him was not just the end of that marriage, but the end of any marriage ever. Because to even comprehend the idea of being with anyone else felt like blasphemy against the one person who I'd sworn to never lose, which meant that, in effect, any chance I had to build the happy family I had pined for my entire life was dead. And not just dead for me, but dead for my child, who I felt at the time would never have a father because I was too weak to make him stay. Which, if you have watched my channel at all, you know how completely intolerable I, in particular, would find that thought. I've worked through these feelings now and realized how unhealthy they were, but I certainly felt them to be wholly true at the time a few years ago when this happened. So I honestly, like, I had a complete mental health collapse. There's really no other way of putting it. I stayed in a state of delusion. I refused to accept that my husband had left. Many of you will have seen me talking about him in interviews or even mentioning him returning, and it's embarrassing, honestly, it is. And it's because
Let me get this super chat from Big Jord. You say they know about having the power and ripping it away. Are there conscious versus unconscious versus conscious types? Are they puppet masters or are they dissociating from their own reality where they're perfect? They're both types. The vast majority, this is a great question, and I'm really glad you asked it. Thank you for this. The vast majority of narcissists are completely unaware that they are narcissists and will never be able to become aware that they are narcissists. Okay, so it's more of like an unconscious thing where they on a deep subconscious level, they need to orchestrate a reality in which reinforces their worldview of themselves as being perfect, excuse me, as being perfect, as being infallible, as being the best looking, the most intelligent, the perfect partner, all this stuff. There's nothing that they can do that's wrong, and this is a deep need that they are not even fully aware of and can never be fully aware of. However, there are absolutely narcissists who are aware of it. There are narcissists who are absolutely aware of what they are and what their personality disorder is, but because they're narcissists, they don't think there's anything wrong with it. And listen, I mean, to play devil's advocate for a moment, excuse me, to play devil's advocate, there's a lot of benefit to being a narcissist. There really is. Like people who get into high level political positions, high level business positions, make a bunch of money, are super successful in their field. It's not that they're all narcissists, but a lot of them are, right? And so there is actually a lot of benefit to being a narcissist. It's not like 100% bad. So for people who are aware that they're narcissistic and they absolutely enjoy having that control, they absolutely enjoy playing puppet master because the thing is, they don't have any emotional empathy. Narcissists, whether they are aware of what they are or not aware of what they are, have zero emotional empathy for you. They do not care about you. They cannot love you. They might, if they are unaware of what they are, they might think they're in love with you, but that's not what it is. They do not experience that in the same way that non narcissists experience it. So it's a little bit of both. I personally think, and I really do try to use, I truly do try to not use the term narcissist as an insult because again, you develop narcissistic personality disorder as a result of who your parents are, your genetics, and your childhood upbringing, and neither of those things are your fault. And I view narcissistic personality disorder as a really sad thing, as something that like I you can never love if you're a narcissist. You can never live your life to what I would call the fullest if you're a narcissist. You always have to be in control. You like, I mean, it's just like you don't have any authentic human relationships. No one will ever really know who you actually are because you don't have any discernible personality traits that are yours, because you're only ever mirroring what other people are doing. That's one of the things narcissists do, is they mirror their personality traits from whoever they happen to be around. So they don't, like, there there's a line in the movie American Psycho, and the book as well. The book is way better than the movie, of course. But there's a line in the movie American Psycho where Patrick Bateman says, I like something to the effect of like, I was simply never there. And that's reality. He was never there. He was always just mirroring the traits of other people around him. And I think that that's a really sad thing, and not an experience that I personally would wish on anyone. Big George, thank you again. That opens up the whole can of worms of narcissistic personality disorder traits being a social contagion through replication in the business world to get ahead, and social media for younger kids. Well, not really, because, well, listen, I mean, everyone has narcissistic traits. Every single person in the world has narcissistic traits. If we had no narcissistic traits, we would not take care of ourselves. Okay? And so no one should be ashamed of wanting success, or wanting that promotion, or wanting to be the CEO, or wanting to get elected to something, or feeling like they're really good at something. You should feel like you're good at what you do. You should enjoy what you do. You should enjoy receiving accolades for what you do. None of those things mean you have narcissistic personality disorder. And so the problem is not that you want to get ahead, not that you feel that you're worthy, not that you feel like you're better than everyone else, because a lot of people feel like they're better than everyone else, and that doesn't mean they're narcissists. None of those things are problems. The problem is when it comes to the focus on controlling every single aspect of your life, and using and being in emotionally abusive relationships with other people in order to feed your tendencies. You can feel like you're awesome and deserve every promotion and deserve the most money in the world and deserve the most praise and the most biggest platform and all that stuff. But if you are not emotionally abusing other people to feed to feed yourself and what you need, you're probably not a narcissist. So I think that we need to separate those two things. And I really don't think people should be ashamed of liking themselves, of feeling proud of themselves, of feeling good about what they're doing, of liking how they show up in the world, even loving how they show up in the world. We should love ourselves. I'm sorry. The problem is not loving ourselves too much. The problem is being emotionally abusive to other people in order to feed our own ego. Does that make sense? I do appreciate the questions.
I was on so much copium that I truly believed he was going to come back at some point, that no matter what, I was going to make it work. Whereas my husband was already saying that not only was it over, but he couldn't envision co parenting our child, and that moreover, maintaining any sort of relationship with us would cripple his ability to have a life going forward. Ultimately, it was my friends and family who put their foot down and stopped me risking even more. When my 2 weeks were up, I wanted to go back to Australia, no matter what he said, and try to keep fixing my marriage, even if I was the only one who wanted to fix it. But my family refused. They said I was absolutely insane for even considering it. Honestly, I probably was. Hell, even after I missed that return flight, I kept thinking the separation was temporary, that I would go back. I probably would have if I were able to, even just to repair some sort of friendship there. If COVID hadn't eventually shut down travel to and from Australia until my temporary travel visa expired, at which point the Australian government flat out refused to allow me in the country again. In fact, the Australian government became almost vengefully obsessed with me, to the point that when I did finally arrive for my flight to leave the country, officers actually pulled me into the back room at the airport and told me I had to give them all the passwords to my phone, my computers, hard drives, etc., if I wanted to see my family in Canada again. I mean, the degree to which this government have messed with me, some random Canadian citizen with no criminal record, now on both political and personal levels, is pretty insane. And, maybe it's just because of my activism, or maybe it's because of who I was married to at the time and the information they had access to. But man,
It wouldn't surprise me at all if her husband set all that up, to be quite frank, because the other thing about narcissists is they are vengeful fucking cunts. Narcissists will go on smear campaigns against you to destroy you. And I say that having been on the receiving end of a narcissistic smear campaign it's pretty much waned now, but for a good year and a half of my life, I like I'm talking like it never occurred to me how low someone could go, the depths to which someone could go to fuck with my life, until I was on the receiving end of a massive narcissistic smear campaign. And so it would not surprise me at all if her husband was behind the harassment that she receives, and that, not that she wasn't getting it already anyway, but to go to that degree, it would not surprise me at all if he set all that up, and I feel really bad for her because of that.
they have not treated me well, that's for sure. To this day, I am still on their VACU consideration list, which is the terrorist criminal consideration list that I was on before, that they only took me off when I quit politics last time. And at this point, I really see no prospect of ever getting off it, which means even if I wanted to, I could never return to Australia. Believe me, certainly over the last couple of years, I have tried to find a way. I spoke to lawyers, put in applications, but nothing has worked. I am barred from the country. It really seemed that God and every force in the universe was trying to tell me, no, Lauren, you can't fix
I
everything.
mean, maybe there's a reason for that,
That's
Lauren.
not how real life works. Sometimes
But I
life
get
just
it.
doesn't
I
go the way you
do.
want
I
it
get it.
to, no matter how hard you try. And sometimes there is a reason for that you just don't understand yet. I had to accept my fate, that ultimately, despite sacrificing every aspect of myself to have things go the other way, I was now alone in the world raising a child, a single mother. Exactly the kind of cautionary horror story the right lays at the feet of the decadence of Western civilization, the kind of person they say would cease to exist if we would just return to tradition. Which brings me to a very important point here. There is a lot they get wrong here. In fact, there is a lot I got wrong, and I didn't even know it at the time. So let's get the most awkward part of this video out of the way. Yes, I know I am the girl who basically was the poster child for marriage and traditionalism, telling everyone if they didn't follow the perfect trad guide that I had figured out at 20 years old, they'd grow up to be alone or single mothers. The horror. I was the queen of the pick-me's until I got picked. Oh boy, how the turntables. But when I spoke about these things in my early 20s, I was never lying. From the time I was little, I wanted nothing more in life than to be married and have kids and stay that way until I died. So when I thought I had gotten that wish, well, you've just heard what happened. In reality, there is no perfect instructor for marriage, certainly not a 20-year-old me. And even if you get a great instructor, there is no saying as an imperfect human being you will follow every step the way they need to be followed. And when things do go wrong, there is certainly no instructor for when your partner tries to leave you or does leave you. Though I do have to thank the many friends and family of mine who have tried to fill that role. But as for the rest of the commentary I did as a 20-something-year-old on the ideals of marriage, whew, let's get one thing out of the way first. Obviously, the ideal situation for any child or marriage is for both parents to stay together, if the marriage itself is not abusive. I might have said that the ideal was the feminine housewife and the masculine breadwinner, and I won't lie, after splitting bills in my marriage, that still honestly sounds pretty good. But I also can't ignore the fact that some of my most traumatic moments and experiences came when I was only a housewife and stay-at-home mom. Literally, when I had no choice but to stay home because of COVID lockdowns. My husband didn't want to be there, which made it very hard for me to want to be there, even though, to be honest, my husband gave every indication of having precisely the kind of benevolent sexist attitudes that I lionized in my youth. But attitudes are not actions. Just finding a man or a woman with conservative opinions is no guarantee you'll find one who can live by those opinions when it ceases to be convenient. Particularly in a world where there's no more community to hold people accountable, and where people, for the most part, choose their views in politics to be more of an aesthetic to paint their particular flavor of anger at the world,
Mm-hmm.
rather than some deeply stable inner guide. That is one serious regret I have and work at daily, is having a surface level faith at the most critical times in my life, and therefore pretending like Catholicism or Christianity in a partner is fine even if it's just on paper or just verbally expressed but not practiced. Meaning, I mean, really, in the case of our marriage, not only did we lack the community for accountability, but we lacked the very God that we had vowed ourselves under. So I don't know what sort of guarantee I expected, anyways, under these sort of circumstances. In fact, and I'll get to this later, a large chunk of surface level conservative politics today seems to be far more interested in selling men and women a convenient vision than in telling them the straight up truth. Although that is all
Yep,
sides of politics these
I
days. But
agree.
speaking of the straight up truth, I really wish I'd been a lot more nuanced with this quote I said when I was younger. Based on many studies, marriage itself is the most reliable happiness indicator. So while some people may have an awful experience, finding lasting, deep satisfaction is likely worth that coin toss for a lot of people.
Can we just make a new rule that A, when a 20-year-old says something on the internet, we, maybe kind of keep in our frame of reference that they're 20 years old and are probably going to, I don't know, evolve their perspective, like, over time, and maybe they might change their mind, and maybe we shouldn't use what they said at 20 years old against them for the rest of their lives. Can we maybe make that rule? In fact, I'm even gonna go further than that. Can we make a rule that, people are allowed to gain life just no matter what their age? People are allowed to, like, gain life experience and evolve their perspective and, dare I say, change their minds and, maybe regret things they said before or rethink things they said before or even look back on things they said before and go like, "God, what the hell was I smoking when I said that?" Because I'll tell you what, as someone who talks on the internet an awful lot, I mean every single thing I say in the moment that I say it. But can we also acknowledge that sometimes stupid shit has come out of my mouth? And maybe I just wasn't thinking through it. I was doing something off the cuff. Maybe I was making a dumb joke, stuff like that. Like, I don't have any regrets about anything that I've said, but like expecting someone to expecting someone who quite literally makes thousands of hours of content to be 100% correct and infallible and to never change their mind or have a new perspective after they make that content to the point of like years after like it's unreasonable and it's not realistic and it's simply just like not how life works. We should be able to say, as it seems like she is here, yeah, I didn't got that one wrong. Mea culpa. Because that's the way life works. That's how we learn. That's how we grow. That's how we gain new perspective. Yada, yada, yada. Rottweiler, thank you for the super chat. Which is why both extremes on the left and right attract the narcissistic types, especially the control freak aspect of NPD pathology. Oh my God, you are so, so, so right about that, Rottweiler. Really dead on. Thank you for that.
I still agree with this technically, but it's funny how you can say something and just gloss over all the parts that are doing all of the work. While some people may have an awful experience, deep satisfaction is likely worth that coin toss. It was a great one liner for owning the libs at the time, but I probably should have spent a lot more time pondering what about the people for whom that coin toss didn't work out, who don't get deep satisfaction, because that is a large portion of the population. What exactly do people like 20-year-old me have to say to them? That's not a rhetorical question. I honestly don't know. I mean, listen to past me. I just breeze over those caveats as if they barely exist in the midst of what is otherwise an infomercial for marriage. And just to be clear, again, since I know people will misconstrue this, yes, I still believe in the importance and the sanctity of marriage. Obviously, just because I have had a rough experience myself and made mistakes myself does not mean I should or would ever bitterly discount what can be a beautiful thing for many others. The problem is that in said infomercial, I spend a ton of time dwelling on the benefits of marriage to people without spending any time talking about how or why those benefits occur. I make it sound like just getting married and having kids will instantly make you happier, more fulfilled, and more likely to be rich and long lived than being single. Like getting married was the final boss of life, and once you beat it, everything is just gauzy post game where nothing can go wrong. This is clearly not true. In a world where divorce is far too common and has been for a long time, our culture, our humanness, and the reality of life will always complicate any dreams, ideological or otherwise, that we may wish to fulfill. The reality is, sometimes single parenthood is the best of bad options, or even the only option remaining, like in my case. We can talk all we want about trying to make those situations rare, but even with the best advice for would be couples possible, some marriages are still not going to work. Some children are still going to end up with a single parent. Yes, parent, I am not going to pretend that this only applies to single moms, although they tend to be more common. Single dads exist too, and I will always be just as proud of them as I am of myself because I know what it is to be a single parent, to fight for your child, to love them so deeply that you overcome the pain of doing it alone. Yet, for some reason, there is this ridiculous, absurd temptation to vilify the parent who stayed, regardless of the circumstances. Having been on both sides of the issue now, I can assure you, vilifying them does nothing to bring more healing. And if anything, antagonizes their children against the politics of those who condemn the person who has cared most for them their entire life. Yes, I made a bad choice. I got married way too quickly. That is something I need to take responsibility for.
That's also
In
another narcissist
retrospect,
thing. Hang
he
on.
said all of the
That's also another narcissist thing. To quickly escalate the relationship, to like go from like I met you to like I love you to let's move in together to let's get married like very 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 quickly. And I say that as someone who got married within 6 months of meeting. But there were extenuating circumstances in my case, all right? But like if it's just happening naturally kind of like in the wild, it is a very narcissistic thing to do to jump into like a relationship and to get married. And the reason it is it's a control issue. Because once they marry you, you've got your claws in them good. And once they have your kid, they are connected to you for the rest of their life and there is nothing they can do about it. So that's another narcissist kind of like warning sign.
right things a conservative woman looking to have a family would want to hear. But there were plenty of red flags I could have picked up on had I cared to look. But once again, because of my childish internet politics, I treated marriage as this happily ever after fantasy where the credits just roll over your eternally smiling face. I felt so much pressure to get married and start a family young that I didn't bother to look too hard. Not when I was naively terrified of being 30 and unmarried and in love to boot. Do not make this same mistake. And here's the thing, the reason I am so adamant about making this critique right now in what would otherwise be much easier to just do as a simple statement on Twitter or something is because it is not just me. In fact, I would say one of the biggest secrets on the political right is just how many people have had their relationships fall to bits but will never talk about it.
Ain't that the
Most of my
truth,
friends or
Lauren?
acquaintances who lean politically
Ain't
right are getting
that
into marriage
the
problems, including
truth?
people in the political sphere that are much
Yep.
smarter than me and will
Mhm.
never do what I'm doing, talking about it publicly. But it's not just them, it's also people with no public profile at all, who married their childhood sweethearts and have been married for a decade. Many of them hardcore Christians who, unlike me, checked all the boxes in the playbook of traditional life. And yet, most people I know are facing cataclysmic marriage problems that none of them could have predicted. Not that it's exclusive to the right, of course, not at all. I have had heartbreaking numbers of friends sobbing to me on the phone about their relationships falling apart from progressives to non-political to far right. And yet all of them share one thing in common. Their lives came
Exactly.
apart at the seams, unexpectedly, in the same way that mine did. And
Well
what's
done,
even
Philip.
more heartbreaking than the fact of their struggles through this is that none of them feel comfortable talking about it publicly, or even sometimes with friends and family, because they feel like failures. And the very thought of it is too devastating to express. And it's even worse for those in the public eye, because failing is definitely not an opportunity to improve on the internet these days. Oh no, it is not a time where you reach out for help from the loving masses. It is blood in the water, which means that a ton of these people are stuck pantomiming marriages that have ceased to exist, stuck in this eternal dance with the corpse of a long dead relationship because they are too afraid to stop moving and let everyone see that it is a corpse. Especially when people's public images and their paychecks rely on this stuff. And I can promise you this, it is a lot more people than you think. A lot more. I'm basically doing full-time e-influencer therapy sometimes, and I love you guys. Don't worry. Anyone who talks to me about their stuff and who I've talked to about all of this that I'm chatting about now, that is in a vault. Everyone's struggling and ready to talk about, or never ready to talk about with the public, the things they're going through whenever it suits them. That's for you. I would never ever reveal any of your secrets online. Don't worry. This is my own choice to share my most devastating life moments with the world, because I am an insane person, clearly. And, I gotta say, it is a tragedy that myself, among many others, have created a political and online culture that, quite frankly, has so little openness and understanding to the broken human condition that not only does it leave most of the people in the public eye skittering around in the background on secret calls trying to work through their emotional issues because they constantly have to lie to the audience, but it also, at the same time, because of that, does not prepare adherents of their ideologies for reality, because they're not hearing any of the realities of our lives.
Oh god, I totally fucking agree with her. And that's why I started off this stream saying that I wish more people would actually be open and authentic about what's going on and what happens and the ups and downs and highs and lows of life. And it's why I've always really tried to be authentic, whether I'm having a good day or a bad day. You guys will know if I'm having a good day or a bad day, because not every day is a good day, and that's just reality. And sometimes things are hard, and that's just reality. And I really wish more people would do that. And that's why I think this that's kind of like why I wanted to watch this, because I think it is actually really important that she's doing this, because there are so, like, she's absolutely right. There's so many people whose lives are falling apart, who the names of, that they don't have anywhere they can turn to because of who they are. And so they start, like, they talk about it in hushed voices behind the scenes. Mark, stop spamming my chat. Um And so, like, what she's saying is absolutely correct, and it also gives people really unrealistic expectations, and who I blame for this problem more than anyone are the people who take advantage of things happening in other people's lives in order to get clout, in order to destroy someone on the internet, in order to, own someone on the internet that they don't like, or that spoke to them in a tone one time, or any of these things. It's like the people who use this, like, I really want to encourage everyone, be skeptical any fucking time you see someone using personal information against, like, an influencer. Make a mental note in your head. Why are they using things from that influencer's personal life that none of us are privy to what's going on in other people, the full extent of what's going on? There's always nuanced, like, perspectives from both sides about what's going on, and we are not entitled to that information. We're not. And so anytime you see someone, maybe like Candace Owens, that uses that type of thing against someone, you make a mental note to never trust that person again, or to be constantly suspicious of who that person is, and their motives and why they're doing what they're doing, because it is absolute and complete bullshit. And to, like, Listen, I certainly have moments where I revel in the downfall of who I perceive to be really horrible people. I'll own that, man. Maybe it's a little bit hypocritical, but like there are people who have made my life extremely goddamn difficult where if they have a bad day, I'm kind of like, I'm not upset about it. Okay? I'm not upset about it at all. But it's not anyone that hasn't proactively come after me at some point and tried to make my life an absolute living hell. And so I guess what I'm saying, like, just be really careful about people who do that shit. And I don't understand random strangers on the internet reveling in someone's personal downfall when they've never even had an interaction with that person. The only people who I will revel in the personal downfall of are people who have proactively, without provocation, tried to make my life a living hell. I think that's a completely different thing. But for like strangers on the internet to cheer this stuff on and engage in these blood sports because they're bored, because they're unsatisfied with their lives, because they can't get laid, like whatever the situation is, can we stop playing into that bullshit? Because that bullshit is what drives exactly what Lauren's talking about. And it forces people who are on the internet to lie to their audiences, to present these unrealistic images of what life is like. And then when they're really struggling, they can't do shit about it because they feel like failures. They feel like they've let everyone down. They know that everything they say and do is going to be used against them. Can we just stop? Can we just all agree to stop?
We yabber on all day about telling hard truths, but somehow those truths are only ever inconvenient for our enemies.
Isn't that the truth?
And never for ourselves, which means our enemies get more broken by ignoring us, and we get more broken by never turning that gaze on ourselves. I say we because I know what a huge role I have played in building this epistemological wall against self-awareness for so many people. I am sorry for that, and if it makes you feel better, know that unlike Mexico, I am still paying for that wall to this day, because God loves a good bit of irony to slap us back to our senses. The greatest irony of this all, though, is that after all of this pain, all this tragedy, all of this loss, mental health struggles, everything I have been through over the last few years, I can genuinely say with every piece of my being, I am much happier now. And I know this is going to sound like what the internet refer to as a cope, Lauren. I get it. However, I can assure you the only coping I was ever doing was pretending that everything was perfect in my life when I was married and trying to retain that image for so long. I suppose for the sake of transparency, I should tell you all that my husband, after a year of leaving my son and I with no financial support, essentially with no home as well, he eventually did change his mind. And don't get me wrong, if this had happened earlier in a different way, I would have been jumping with joy. But unfortunately, the way that he tried to come back into my life was somehow even more unhealthy than our marriage itself.
That's called a Hoover. Narcissists do that. When you are in a relationship with a narcissist, they will come to believe that they own you for the rest of your life. And so when the narcissist, being a narcissist, destroys the relationship with you during your devaluation period and then kind of cuts you off, they eventually, and it could take weeks, it could take months, it could take years, but they will eventually trot back into your life as though nothing has happened, as though they haven't done anything wrong, and they will try to hoover you back into a relationship with them in order to continue controlling you because you've gotten outside of the sphere of their control. And remember, they're narcissists. And so they have to continue to lock down that control because in their head, and this is an unconscious thing, they're not aware of it, they own you for the rest of your life. You are their property. So he hoovered her. That's what happened.
It was a return built on threats and not love. And if I have learned one important lesson that
You tried to
everyone
hoover and
needs
she
to hear
said
from
no.
this
Good for
video,
her.
it would be do not stay in a relationship where the threat of abandonment or any other severe threats are dangled over your head in order to force compliance. And do not do this to your partners. It does not build a foundation for a happy, healthy marriage or world for your children either. Love and goodness just cannot thrive in fear. My husband's constant threats of abandonment and divorce, if I didn't jump through certain hoops, did not just hurt me as a person, they hurt my ability to be a good mom, a daughter, a friend, a wife. And I know it would do the same to any dad as well. I didn't know this at the time, but what I was experiencing is typically referred to as a coercive control relationship. I learned this phrase in the process of successfully getting a court order to protect myself from some of the actions my husband took throughout this period. Quite frankly, I have hardly gotten into the details of some of the more abusive levels of coercive control that I did experience, but for the sake of my child, I would rather not have them immortalized on the internet forever, and also for the sake of growth. I don't really believe in putting people's worst moments online because I think that they should have an opportunity to leave those behind themselves and grow from them. I also want to reiterate that none of these actions or orders have to do with our son. I would never, ever want anyone to get the idea that I have taken any action to keep them separate. Due to the nature of the relationship, the only request I had put in place legally was the need for a mediator for co parenting. At this point, all requests and repeated open offers for mediation have been rejected. This is not something I wanted to get into the details of, but it is something I unfortunately know will be an accusation and something that is a deep moral issue for me, especially after all of my time advocating for equal rights among parents. So I really wanted to clarify that. It's been an overall awful situation that I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy. But as I mentioned at the beginning of this video, this really overall is not a tragedy story. So let's get into that part. I've addressed some of the big questions I'm sure people would have for me, and advice I've learned not through my own genius, but rather God and life humbling me through my own mistakes. So I think it's time to answer the massive question of what do we do with someone like me? What do we do with people who have failed to achieve the ideal we have for life and our world? I think this is really the ultimate question of our time because conservatives are allegedly trying to heal a broken world. And I think many too often don't understand how that world and those people became broken in the first place. And for young people like me in the early days of my politics, our only vision of traditionalism and family in the modern life is one sold to us by Norman Rockwell posters and Chad memes. Even if you're lucky enough to have parents still together, which gives you a leg up in perspective, our parents' dating experiences and social pressures were entirely different from our current times, meaning that when people like me and many others inevitably fail to live up to a PR campaign, it can feel like we are left in the dust with nothing to go to but the modern approach. A worldview that not only accepts brokenness, but encourages brokenness as a virtue at times. And while acceptance can be very comforting in a cold world, and I think we have a lot to learn from that, gone too far can also lead to a lack of self reflection and a deepening of one's brokenness. I long for a day where those who claim to want to save civilization both acknowledge and love the broken while encouraging self reflection and structure.
I agree.
Unfortunately, you rarely find both in one ideological camp.
Yep.
Worse, I find people feign that their cruelty is some sort of correctional compassion, whilst
Exactly.
only
I
ever
agree.
wielding it against their political enemies.
Yep.
The people we should be correcting the most in our lives are those who already know and respect us. And if you wouldn't be cruel to them for correctional purposes, why would you think cruelty would work on people who don't know or respect you at all? I won't
Exactly.
lie, I nearly abandoned my political beliefs altogether just to cope with the confusion of what to do with myself, as my life's reality was so contradictory and confusing to my own political messages, as I assume a detransitioners would be to the left. This is why I think it can be dangerous to think about life too much in the political. You will twist and contort yourself into knots of insanity trying to meet inhuman standards until you reach a point where you either have to lie about your life, which most in the political sphere do, or where you give up on trying altogether. And I have hit both points in this crazy journey. I definitely reached a stage in my life where, after my husband left, as the months went by and the reality started to set in, my life just became about surviving the day. I was in such a low state of depression that there was just no grand vision anymore. I was angry with God for not answering my prayers. I turned my back on him as I have too many times before. And I just lived as if the future didn't exist. Just try to get through the day over and over and over, try to get out of bed, right? And I was very, very mentally lost for a long time. This experience has really given me a useful sense of empathy and understanding for hurt and broken people that I find incredibly helpful in life and friendships. The trad wife LARPer I was is dead, but perhaps the difference between that person and the person I am now is the same difference as a LARPer's character sheet and a real human being. I know now who I am much better. I am not some right-wing Valkyrie. I am not some bastion of conservative femininity. I do not want to be a saint of any ideology. I don't want to be held to anyone's standards because I know reality is far too confusing to be summed up in a listicle of goals or instructions. I can't do it. I'm sorry, but I can be a redneck. I'm pretty good at that. I certainly love my freedom, guns. I don't trust the government. Definitely much less than I even did before, and somehow it keeps going down to less levels of trust every day. And despite everything that I've been through, all the craziness, I still do believe in love. I still do believe in duty, and I think they are not dead in this world. Or at least I very much want to believe in that. But a lot of people, particularly the young, have already given up on things like love, duty, marriage, all of that stuff, which is why I think many young people are fleeing the right in droves. While some of this can definitely be attributed to modern education or media, it's always worthwhile looking inward on one's own messaging and where they could be missing things. I mean, really, telling a generation made up of increasing numbers of children of divorce that the only parent, the single parent who stayed to raise them and gave them some semblance of what love and responsibility is the thing that's ruining Western
A
civilization
really good
is not a
point.
strategy. Telling women and men who face divorce, separation, or failure to ever marry in the first place that they are worthless failures now is not a strategy. Telling young men who are constantly getting poorer relative to their elders and may never be able to afford to get married or get a home that the only reason they feel that way is because they're betas and not working hard enough is not a
That's
strategy.
a really
In
good
fact,
point.
generally speaking, giving life advice about things you have never experienced and as such don't understand is not a strategy. It is just stupid. And no one,
I mean, I can understand giving life advice about something that you haven't directly experienced, but you also have to be intellectually honest and say, like, I'm doing this based. This is, you know what? This is why I have never understood this like debate bro culture on the internet, because anytime you like watch, or on the extremely rare occasions where I've been tricked into participating in like one of these debates, you only get like like this study says X, Y, B, and Z, and this study says X, Y, B, and Z, and this study says X, Y, B, and Z. And you're talking to like these kids who live on YouTube and Twitch that have no life experience at all, and they're just citing study after study after study after study after study as a way to like understand the world. Well, guess what, guys? Every single academic study has something called inclusion criteria and exclusion criteria. Inclusion criteria is a extremely limited set of criteria that says this is the exact population I am studying. Exclusion criteria says anyone who meets this list of criteria cannot be in this study. So what it's meant to do is focus your sample for your study, which is helpful, right? Because you know you're studying something very specific. But the problem is when you take a study that has a really specific type of sample, and then you try to broadly generalize about that study to the entire world, when excuse me, the entire world does not meet the inclusion exclusion criteria, then the study that you're taking that was meant to be a very narrow limited study now makes no sense when you generalize it to the broader world, and yet you're basing your entire worldview off this is an academic study in a peer-reviewed journal. Well, sure, fine, but that academic study in the peer-reviewed journal had a really, really, really specific use, and you are not abiding by what that study was meant to be used for. And by the way, it probably actually says that in the effing study. So don't listen to people who like engage in this study says this and this study says that and this study, like, because if they can't speak from life experience, then there's probably a reason they can't speak from life experience. Rottweiler, thank you for the super chat. Funny how, especially, I think that means far right, Rottweiler. Far right influencers rationalize being an asshole as being corrective, compassionate by insulting and pathologizing. I mean, how you think you're going to get people to vote for you when you do nothing but insult them all day long and tell them what horrible human beings they are. And my favorite is, liberalism is a mental disorder. They're all mentally unwell. They're all psychotic. They all have mental disorders. You think someone's ever going to vote for you if you call them a libtard over and 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 over again? You think you're ever going to get them to wake up and to red pill and to see how effed up their own side is if you're constantly telling them they have a mental disorder? Can we just stop doing that, please? I agree. Let me see.
No one was more stupid than 20-year-old Lauren pretending a book report on marriage statistics was actual life advice. That advice got me trapped in a hell of my own making. And in order to get out of it, I have to do the one thing that a public figure cannot afford to do. I have to allow myself to be wrong. Life is a lot more complicated than ideals. No listicle or video screaming about what you should have done with your life will help a fundamentally broken person so much as actual help from real humans. I know I'm repeating this point, but it is important because I speak from experience. So believe me, when your mind has broken from pain, it just hurts more hearing someone remind you how broken you are. And because it hurts, you rebel. You make more bad choices because you don't care how right someone is once they have disrespected you. Fuck them. Better to spiral even further than to listen to someone like that. Mercifully, I had an entire community of friends and loved ones who prevented this from happening to me to catastrophic degrees, but not everyone is so lucky. And I certainly will not judge people whose lot I have been shielded from solely by fortune. People say kindness has not gotten us anywhere. I'm sure that's true for the internet or any sort of political rally where you don't actually know anyone, but those environments are not real life. They're dark woods of error filled with tragedian muppets pretending to be people that they aren't because the person
Yep.
they are is too broken,
Yep.
too purposeless to acknowledge. The internet, Twitter, all of it. It's Plato's cave. 90% of the time,
God,
we're
it's
looking
so
at
fucking
shadow
true.
puppets of people's lives.
So
And
true.
everyone, but especially people in the political sphere, have fallen for this puppet show. We get so much joy out of jeering at how cringy other people's shadow puppet selves are that we never bother to leave the cave and cut our own strings by encountering real humanity. Because real humanity is imperfect. Unlike the ridiculous, overpowered, implausible character sheets we write for ourselves on social media. But enough about what I and the world get wrong. It's time for me to put my money where my mouth is, because if the conservative, or really any commentary sphere, does not have the answers for when your partner leaves you and your life falls apart, or when your marriage falls apart, whatever it is, I guess it is only fair that I tell you what I did actually do when that happened. Not because I have all the answers at all, I don't, but because maybe it'll help someone to know they're not alone and to see what path I took. After my husband said he did not want me to return to Australia and that he wanted nothing to do with me anymore, my parents took me and my son in for nearly 7 months when I got back home. As I mentioned earlier, I spent the last of the money I had in the bank supporting our marriage, and I never got child support, alimony, or anything like that. And I didn't have anywhere to live if my family didn't take me in. To this day, the only finances transferred has been from me to my ex, despite me earning less. I would not make such a point of this right now if the internet didn't act like this was some sort of impossible thing that could never happen. It does. It's cringe to admit how suicidally in love I was and desperate to fix things, desperate to give just everything to this marriage, even if the other person didn't want to fix it, and even if the things that needed fixing weren't mine to fix. But I also take some pride in this. We mock the hopelessly in love at times a lot, but I think more people should be hopelessly in love, if I'm being honest. But they should be hopelessly in love with each other. That's the key word. It should go both ways, especially if you're married. I know I gave it my all, and I can say, having done that, it's not a small comfort, it's actually a huge comfort. I feel I don't have to hold any shame there. I can always know in my head that I did everything I possibly could at that time. The way the internet describes separation can be very silly. When we talk about how the system is broken, I agree there are aspects of the family court that do hurt men, but ultimately I find it is largely broken in favor of people who are the most aggressive. If you don't want to get divorced, if you're the one trying to fix things, it seems like on both ends you get screwed, man or woman. Asking nicely for custody, asking nicely to co-parent or for child support, whatever it is. It does very little when dealing with a partner who refuses to mediate. Viciousness does work, and I certainly did not have the energy, the vibe, any of it to get vicious or aggressive for money, especially when I was at a state where I really wanted to fix things. So I just made do. I lived at my parents' house in their spare bedroom, and my son had the closet. It was a big closet. We made it look nice, but it was a very small space. And as mentioned earlier, my mental health was not exactly going swimmingly at this point. I was struggling with a lot. But one of the incredible, beautiful things about having children is that they can save you as much as you can save them. You don't really have a choice to have a full blown mental breakdown because you have the most incredible, beautiful human in the world relying on you. So I was able to pick myself back up and get into making actual monetized YouTube videos, streaming, and doing some odd jobs behind the scenes. My parents were there through every step of the way, loving us and building us back up. And then their church stepped in. One of the biggest fears I definitely had was not having good male role models for my son. I can say with extreme confidence now, he absolutely has those. The church has so many incredible kids groups he goes to, a swath of friends there. Even the teenagers at the church just love him like there's no tomorrow and are involved in his life. We spend most of our days off-roading, swimming, going to the beach, sledding in the winter, exploring the Canadian wilderness, spending a lot of time with his little mates. He's actually, my friend Olivia is here filming with me, and her daughter's playing with him right now. And, he's got a lot of upstanding men and women in his life, the best of the best. One thing the internet is really not good for is tempering your feelings about the other gender after you've been in some sort of horrible breakup. It can be really easy to assign all of your life's pain to some sort of natural failure of the opposite sex to convince yourself there was simply no avoiding your position despite your decision making and partner. And I'm not saying every situation is the fault of an individual's decision making and partner. People can change overnight like you wouldn't believe. But what I'm trying to get at here is I've been lucky enough to avoid this resentment that I see many others hold, understandably but misguidedly so, towards the other sex after a separation. While bad ones exist, more than I thought when I was younger. I was a bit delusional as a teenager and a young adult because I lived in a very safe, conservative bubble. There are many good men in this world. There are many. My vision of that has not been shaken, but if anything strengthened through this experience, I'd just say my vision and understanding of what good men are has maybe changed and become a little more reality based. And things only got better from there. Eventually, after living with my parents for those 7 months, I was able to save enough money for rent to get my own place for my son and I, an adorable little cabin in the woods that I knew would be good for us. Good, but not exactly comfortable. What running water there was absolutely filthy to the point that you had to boil it if you wanted to drink it. That is, assuming it hadn't frozen over solid by the Canadian winter. The cabin was infested with ants, and for the first 2 weeks I lived there, I woke up to them falling on my face more times than I could count. And they were like carpenter ants. They bite, but eventually got those out of the cabin. It took a lot of effort. Again, it wasn't comfortable, but it was good for me. because it grounded me in reality. It showed me what people have to deal with when they're barely scraping by and they have dependents. You don't really see that when you're a gag influencer traveling the world and living off the internet bullshit economy. You never have to deal with the same landlord struggles or the crippling financial burden of taxes without an accountant to shield your assets. You never have to really work, which might have given you a bit more sympathy for the working class had that been the case, like it did for me in this situation, much to the chagrin of my pull yourself up by your bootstraps kind of followers. And more than being a good, hard lesson in reality, this experience living paycheck to paycheck with only other sufferers for company was truly unexpectedly beautiful. You see, the cabin was actually located on a massive property, and I was not the only person living off the land there because we had fallen on hard times. In fact, I wasn't even the person who had fallen the hardest necessarily in my surroundings. It was, for lack of a better term, a trailer park I was living in. And some of the people there didn't even have trailers. Some of them just lived out of their cars or vans, or, as in the case of one absolute legend, rented a shed with a tarp over it. If you're like the spoiled influencer I was once upon a time, you probably can't imagine how that could be beautiful. You're still part of a world where people assume that people at a trailer park are all unemployed drug addicts, hookers, or future victims of a serial killer. You might even assume that those people are just trash waiting to be dumped in a landfill. How, you wonder, could this situation I was in possibly be beautiful? Well, it was. You know, those stereotypes you have in your head, those stereotypes I may have had in my head, dead wrong, I'll tell you right now. In that environment, one that most people would regard as forsaken, I found something precious. After years of talking about this longing and this need for community, I finally got to experience it. Eventually, all of us would meet each other, knock on our doors, have chats about the day, and we started gathering for bonfires down by the water in the middle of the woods almost every night during the summer. A community dinner or drinks where we'd all bring stuff to share. And my son and I would come out, we'd play by the river, go for walks in nature, sing and dance every night at this fire with all of these incredible people that just took us in and loved us. They would show them how to collect firewood, play catch, climb trees, all of it. And everyone there would just help each other out, not for reward, but out of genuine love and just care for one another. For example, people always let me know that
I think one of the things that, first off, I haven't been saying much because I really do appreciate this section of the story, and like, this is super, super, super vulnerable what she's doing, and I really like have a deep, sincere appreciation for the fact that she's done it. Um, but what I was thinking about was, I mean, I've said it like a million times. I never planned to be on the internet. This was not part of my life plan. This is something that happened and I kind of rolled with it, and I wanted to use it as an opportunity to like help people and serve like in a different way. And I haven't always been perfect about it. God knows that. And I never will be perfect about it. God knows. But like, this was not part of my life plan. Like, being around all the people that I was around in like 2020 when I was like more so in that political garbage was not part of my life plan, like at all in any way. And I think one of the things that led to a lot of the struggle and the conflict that I've had with people like publicly is the fact that I came from like a different world where it's not what Lauren is describing, but it resembles more what Lauren is describing. And I had had that type of experience before. I had had that type of experience of community. I had had that type of, and that was honestly like the bulk of my experience in the world. It was like I had people I could rely on. I had people that would, just like show up and help each other and support each other, and you just do it because it's like the right thing to do, and it just like that's, and you don't even think about it, and you don't think to like question the motives of people because everyone's just doing it. It's just it is what you do. You're just like you try to be like a good person, right? And so I came like Lauren became like an influencer when she was like really young, right? My YouTube channel grew when I was 40. And I have said a million times, I thank God every single day I did not get on the internet when I was young. I thank God for that. Or I mean I was on the internet, but I didn't have like a platform or anything. And so like she didn't experience this type of thing until after she experienced all the bullshit with the internet. I had experienced this type of thing before the bullshit for the internet. In fact, and again, it's not the same thing. It wasn't like it like my journey is not like it's not exactly the same. I mean, obviously, I'm 29. I don't know, like, I'm 29, like, should I, like, 40? Fuck, I misspoke. I am obviously 29, alright? But I had experienced something more similar to what she's talking about as my only kind of, like, adult life experience before I got on the internet. And so, when I started being around all of these bullshit, inauthentic influencers, I made the assumption without even thinking about it or considering it that it was the same thing. I didn't know it was different. And so I would go into situations again, just trying to help people, be supportive, like whatever. That's what you do. And when I applied that same principle to these insane people who are desperate to be famous on the internet. And Mike Harlow, I'm looking at you, you goddamn fucking piece of human garbage. Those were the first people that would stab me in the back if they saw an advantage to it. Those were the first people who, without even thinking, would twist things out of context, use every opportunity to try to destroy me because it was going to grow their fledgling YouTube channel because I'm the most successful thing they've ever talked about on their YouTube channel, Mikey. So I truly had no idea how, selfish, narcissistic, ego-driven, fame whore. I had no idea how bad people were in this world. And so when I would get like basically like run over by these people who I had helped and I had supported and I was, again, you do it because it's like the right thing to do because that is the world I came from. I would be really, 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 really offended and really pissed off because I didn't realize that I was existing in a different ecosystem. Because when you're in it, it's easy to look in from the outside onto someone's life and say, "Oh, I understand what's happening here." But when you are in your life, when you are in your experience, it's really hard to kind of like detach and look at it from an outsider perspective. Now, I realize all of this now, but back then, like, truly, I did not understand. And so I think I understand what she's talking about here.
They felt safer on the property, which was crawling with bears because I had guns there. They could call me up if they needed me. Others had plumbing or cooking skills that could help out. And it was literally the type of group where I could text someone for a cup of sugar and they'd bring it over so we could all have cookies together and dance to King Harvest, whatever it was at the bonfire. To a right winger, this would seem like communism. In fact, many of us joked that we were just waiting for a hippie cult leader to come along. But they never did, because to a left-winger, I'm sure we just looked like a bunch of trailer park deplorables. Maybe we were, but that environment was home.
Everybody here is out of sight, but they don't bark and they don't fight. They keep things.
You gotta jump in it, what?
Everybody Everybody was dancing in the moonlight. Dancing in the moonlight. Everybody feeling warm and bright. It's such a fine and natural sight. Everybody dancing in the moonlight. We like our fun and we never fight. You can't dance and stay uptight. It's supernatural delight. Everybody was dancing in the moonlight.
Lauren, what did you just do?
Dancing in the moonlight. Everybody feeling warm and bright. It's such a fine and natural sight. Everybody dancing in the moonlight.
And I will say, the type of people you find in these environments, you never know what their pasts are going to be. Some people just didn't have to live there, but chose to be there because they wanted to escape from it all, like the rat race of society that constantly has demands put on us all of status symbols, and you have to be getting more money, and they just, screw that, I'm going to go live in nature with all these people. Others have extremely dignified pasts, like you wouldn't believe, incredible educations and jobs. Some people lost those jobs during COVID because of lockdown policy, and rental prices are just ridiculous in Canada. So my judgment of places like that has been completely flipped on its head. There's a lot more going on there than what people's assumptions would say. And as for me, you might wonder what these people thought of my job and what I did. Well, they didn't care. I wasn't
Ain't
Lauren
that the
Southern,
truth? Ain't that the
scourge of the
truth?
libs, baby boomers, immigrants, and Islam. I was just Lauren. That's it. And I liked being just Lauren there. Just Lauren did a lot more for her community than Lauren Southern ever did. Because as just Lauren, I didn't have the luxury of being a brand. I was actually just a human being, just me. And that was pretty damn cool. I think the best part of being in that community was the kind of people who live there and can relax and just have a fire every other night are people who aren't interested with power. And that is the complete opposite of the political world I've spent most of my life in. And I think among people who are not interested in power is where peace is found. That's certainly where I found it in my life, the most I've seen in my life, for sure. Today, I have gotten my feet back under me and moved away from that world, tragically, but it will always stay with me, and with it has come a lesson that I desperately needed. That just as benevolent sexist attitudes don't automatically make someone a good husband, ideology doesn't create community. Ideals don't make a positive community. Shared needs and struggles do. And while I am back in the comfortable world where water runs year round and central heating works, I will never let myself become so alienated from reality again. I will never forget what community truly is again. And on that note, it would be remiss of me not to thank some of the people who form my community today, because on top of the community I joined in the woods, in the trailer park, there were others who helped me during these rough periods. I got to rebuild a lot of the relationships I had from childhood before I got into politics. And a lot of those girlfriends came out to help me set up my home, just loved me, showed immense support to me. Olivia, shout out. You all know who you are, and thank you very much. And while I kept it all pretty private, there were a few people in the political world who helped me navigate this all and helped me during what was a total emotional and mental breakdown for me. I want in particular to thank Evelyn Ray, who some of you may know through her Twitter account or the videos she's done. She was there for me through so much of this all, literally giving my son and I a bed to sleep in whenever we needed it, feeding us, one of the few people I knew in Australia. And I cannot speak highly enough about that woman. She is an incredible soul. I am forever thankful for her and everyone else in the political world. Once again, you guys know who you are. It means a lot to me that you kept my secret and helped me navigate some really insane waters. I'm now at a point where I've built up such a wonderful group of humans around me that I truly believe we have created the best life possible with our current limitations for my son and I, and continue to do so every day. If the right-wing world I was a part of in my life was correct about anything, it was definitely, at least for me, that being a mother is the most fulfilling and beautiful aspect of my life. It really is. There isn't a day I wake up regretting the way that my life went. when I see my son, sorry, I would not take back a single thing that has happened to me
Good for her.
because I get to see my son smile every day and tell me that he loves me every day. It's like the most incredible thing in the world. Wouldn't change it. It is truly one of the deepest joys that I've found in life. You know, life is still a struggle. I've got legal debt. I am not rich by any stretch, but I have learned well that making money, the most important thing in one's life, can eat your soul. And I rather like having a soul, even if it is in rehab. I also certainly don't have that wonderful right-wing Valkyrie tradwife image that is so nice to curate anymore. But you know what is nicer than having a good public image? You know what ultimate irony God threw at me so as to deliver me from the 9 circles of social media? It took me losing my marriage and the false image of myself I had created to finally encounter and really feel real love. And that was sure as hell worth it, and still is. I think I'm probably going to take a little bit of a break from doing videos for a bit, maybe a few months, enjoy the summer, let this sink in with my audience. But when I get back, I think I want to include a lot more honesty in my videos, a lot more real me and the experiences I've had in my life. Honestly, some of the best, most educational, funniest stories I have to tell are ones that I've never told anyone because they don't fit neatly into any sort of narrative. And also, some of them are just things that I'm like, oof, I don't think I can talk about this for like 10 years because it's a bit crazy. Ask me about my trip to the Arctic Circle at some point. That was a wild one, but ask me in like 5 or 10 years. And I'm excited. I'm just excited to share a bit more of what the real world is like rather than what I feel we're expected to say as political influencers and characters on YouTube. I don't really want to be that. I've woken up at 27 and decided this is
Oh, she's only
sticking
27.
with the talking
Jesus
points isn't necessarily
Christ.
what I want to do with my life.
She's
I
only
think there's a lot
27.
more depths that I've discovered in my personal life that I think I can bring to the internet too. But yeah, like I said, I'll probably
That's
take a bit of a break. I
mind-boggling.
appreciate you all watching this. I have no idea how this is going to land. Probably your guys' reaction to my whole truth video is the one thing that made me confident enough to make this one because I didn't expect that to land well at all. And it really seemed a lot of you enjoyed the honesty and felt the internet needed more of that. So I appreciate that. And I appreciate all of you who have supported me through these years, through all this chaos. I apologize if you feel lied to with everything I've kept a secret, but I hope you can understand it's been something I've had to process and work through to get to this point of joy with my life and comfort and mental healing to be ready to tell the world and bring you in on my journey. But I appreciate you. I appreciate everyone who has stuck around, and I hope that some of my journey that I've shared resonates with you. I look forward to reading your comments and seeing if it did. But yeah, I'm going to go head out and play with my kid and Olivia, go to the beach. It'll be good. Have a good one.
Oh, wow. Good for her, man. Good for her. It is mind-boggling to me that she's only 27. You know, there's something called the Saturn return that it's like an astrological thing. I know not all of you are woo, but whatever. But like essentially the Saturn return happens every 30 years. And basically what it kind of like means is that like every 30 years you are going to go through some massive effing life changes. And your life prior to your Saturn return and who you are like when you're 27, 28, 29 is going to be just turned on its damn head when your Saturn return hits. And we all go through this, but like the fact is she hasn't even hit her Saturn return yet is my point. And so it'll actually be really fascinating to see what happens. And I hope she keeps this up. I really do. I hope she keeps on telling the truth about what's going on and being authentic. Thomas says, will we have a stream where you break down all the hit pieces that got wrote about her because she exposed her life like this? I have no idea what you're talking about, Thomas, because I haven't looked at them. To be honest, I really, unless I'm watching something on my channel that's been like sent to me by like a bunch of people saying, Carlin, you need to watch this, you need to watch this, you need to watch this. I really don't interact with content around this stuff. So I have no idea what you're talking about. Maybe I'll do some Google searches, but it would actually be interesting for me to kind of like, I guess, see the reaction to that. But I thought that video was fabulous. I really did. I like that I like the honesty. I like the authenticity. I think the internet needs a lot more of that. I really hope she didn't get raked over the coals too badly for it, although I'm sure she probably did get quite a bit of grief over it. And I guess, like, you know, when I when I decided to go down this like YouTube road, when all of a sudden like I had just kind of like I had the YouTube channel, but I wasn't really doing anything with it. And it was funny because like it was only like a month or so prior to me accidentally going viral on the internet for politics that I actually had started kind of like adding content to YouTube. I really like it, and once I went viral for that Trump rally thing, like my YouTube channel just grew massively, like really, really quickly. Like, I mean, like tens of thousands subscribers like overnight. There were points when I was getting like, over 1,000 new subscribers a day. Like it was a lot. And and when all that happened, I was like, well, you have this now. What are you going to do with it? And I made a commitment to myself that if I was going to do this YouTube thing and I was going to do this internet thing, then my only goal really was to articulate an authentic human experience above everything else. And that is something that I think I've done, and I think I've stayed true to that goal, and that's something I'm very proud of, but it is also the thing that has caused me so many problems and so much heartache and so much anger and so much stress, and like I'm almost crying just thinking about it. I didn't expect how hard it was going to be an authentic person on the internet. I really didn't expect it. I had this crazy idea that people valued authenticity, and I do think people do, but when you are authentic and you do show the reality of life and the ups, the downs, the highs, the lows, the anger, the sadness, the outrage, the like whatever, like et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, like all parts of it. When you bring authenticity, you also create enemies because the people that hate you the most, you are reflecting back to them every single thing that they are not. Do you know why I have a list of like really like about a dozen like influencers who just hate me more than anything on the planet, and these people are just like they are obsessive in their hatred over me. Not so much anymore, but like they were like for about like a good 2 years. They really were. Every once in a while now. It's really gotten a lot better lately. But if you look at that list of people who just complain about me and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, all this bullshit, they are also some of the most inauthentic people on the fucking internet. And you can tell that. I can tell that. I mean, I hope you guys can tell that. And so I really think, and I could be wrong about this is just my intuition, I guess, that the reason that they hate me so much, it's not grounded in reality. It's not it's not based on anything that I really do. It's not based on anything that I really say. These people don't even know what I really do. They don't even know what I really think. They don't watch my content. They don't listen to it. They don't read my Substack. They don't listen to my podcast. They don't do any of this. So it's not grounded in reality. It's based on something else. And the only thing that I can think is that I have reflected back to them what they maybe wish they could be doing, but cannot bring themselves to do because they're too desperate to be famous on the internet and have the perfect pretense and the perfect facade, and they just want to have this ideal version of themselves out on the internet. And me coming, and I, like, you guys see, like, I mean, you don't see everything about me, obviously, but like, I think I'm more real than most people on the internet in that I if I'm angry, you will know it. If I am having a bad day, you will know it. And I think the fact that I'm not afraid to do this stuff, even knowing it will cause problems, even knowing that these assholes are going to use it against me, it reflects back to them everything they're not, but kind of probably wish they could be. It's like an unlived self sort of thing. And I think that that's what drives the hate because it's not grounded in reality at all. It's not, there's no rational reason for how much, like, it's not like she blocked me on Twitter. Like, why are you that angry and that obsessed with someone who blocked you on Twitter? I mean, does that seem a little ridiculous to anyone else? Seems a little ridiculous to me. So I say that because I really do hope Lauren keeps going down this path. She's only 27 years old. God damn. And I really do, because I do think that the internet needs more of this. I think that the more people who are authentic, the easier, the more people who have authentic journeys in the public, the easier we make it for other people to be their authentic self because we show them that it's okay. And I can't think of a more painful life experience than going through life pretending I'm something I'm not because of what people on the internet will think. I want to be able to give people permission to, like, be yourself, be imperfect, like, have your ups and your downs, know that you can always get through it. Um that's what I would prefer to do, and I think that, like, the more people that are doing that, the better the world will be. I mean, for lack of, like, not to sound too cheesy, but, like, come on. Rottweiler, I thank you for the super chat. I'd say she had a Horus moment, and like Horus, she saw the evil in the world and lost an eye metaphorically, yet she came back stronger. I mean, I think she absolutely did. She lost more than an eye, it sounds like. She's been through the goddamn ringer, and good for her. And moving into that trailer park, it sounds like it was like the best thing that ever could have happened to her. And you know what's funny about life though is, like, again, being that I'm obviously 29, but maybe I'm intellectually 42, but, like, I'm obviously 29, right? But intellectually I'm I've jumped times, and, like, intellect my brain is 42 even though everything else is obviously 29. Um when you look back on life, and I know I'm not like, I'm about to sound like I'm like a senior citizen and I'm like going to the old mic and I'm like preparing to die or something like that. That's not what I'm talking about. But, like, when you look back on a longer time range of experience, um, you start to see the things that you perceived to go badly at the time suddenly make sense. And you can see this negative thing happened to me, but it led me to this. This negative thing happened to me, but it led me to this. This negative thing happened to me, but it led me to this. This negative thing happened to me, but it led me to this. And you start to see that there's a logic for how all this works. And it really does actually help in the long run when you're able to have the perspective to say, I thought that was the worst possible thing that could happen to me, but that thing led me to achieving something that I would not have been able to achieve without that negative thing happening to me. So Lauren has this experience of, like, she meets this guy, the wrong guy. She falls in love. She gets married. He turns into a dick. He leaves her. She has to go home with her tail between her legs, has no money, has to move in with her parents. Well, guess what? And that sucks. And I don't want to diminish any of that because you could obviously tell that that was very real. And I don't want to diminish like what that experience was. But the fact that all that happened led her to living in that trailer park. And the fact that she lived in the trailer park led her to finding the community that she was always looking for. Sometimes the universe works in mysterious ways, man. Sometimes God is going to show up in ways that you least expect it. When you are at your lowest low, when you've given up, when you're just like, I got nothing, dude. I got nothing. And I have some recent experience with this. And I'll tell you what, it's a beautiful thing when you actually see it. I have nothing left to give, God. Like, I can't anymore. And then God shows up and gives you exactly what you wanted, but maybe you didn't know you wanted it at the time. Can anyone else relate to what I'm talking about now? I bet, like, and you look back and you're like, holy, like you get exactly what you wanted, but it shows up in like a really unexpected way, or you had to kind of you had to walk through the fire to get to that place. I wish we were teaching people that. I wish we were teaching people that, like, your lowest lows are going to lead to your highest highs. And you're going to appreciate those highest highs much more because they came from your lowest lows. And if you never had the lowest lows in your life, if you never had the trauma, if you never had the heartbreak, if you never had the anger, if you never had, any of these things that make you feel like you're destroyed, right? You aren't going to fully appreciate the amazing gifts that life and God have for you. Because if everything is just nice all the time and beautiful all the time and perfect all the time, we don't really appreciate it. You cannot ever understand how amazing a hot shower is if you never had a cold shower in your life. And trust me, when your water heater breaks or your power goes out for a week, as it did the week before my wedding, and you have to take that cold shower, the next hot shower you take is going to seem like the most amazing GD shower you ever took in your life, because you're learning by comparison. You had the cold, and so the hot seemed even hotter and even nicer and even more healing than it did, even though you'd taken a million hot showers before. And the same is true when we hit our lowest lows, when more bullshit happens to us than we think we can handle. Well, guess what? That bullshit, if you allow it to, can lead to your highest highs again, and you're going to appreciate those highest highs a whole lot more because you had to crawl through the fucking mud to get there. And I wish we talked about this more. I seem to get canceled every time I talk about everything happening for a reason on the internet because someone takes offense to it. I'm looking at you, Libertarian Party Mises Caucus. Fuck you. The Libertarian Party Mises Caucus quite literally, like, canceled me because I had this conversation on the internet. Because I said that trauma leads us to like things that we're supposed to be doing in life. And I don't regret it at all, because if the Libertarian Party Mises Caucus cannot wrap their heads around the fact that these discussions need to happen and that they're valuable, then they can run around with all these influencers pretending to be perfect all the time and see how that gets them, see where that gets them. Wish them the best of luck. Anyway, I think that's a pretty good place to end the stream. We've been going for about 3 hours now. That was a fun stream to do. Did everyone have fun today? Please mount that like button for me if you had fun today. I will be back tomorrow at 5 p.m. for happy hour. I don't know what we're watching yet, but we'll watch a woke training from start to finish at 5 p.m. And guys, if you have not yet seen our last happy hour, then do make sure you head over to my Substack, which is Carlyn, Karlyn.substack.com. You can find a link in the description below. And check out the queer theology article. God is apparently very, very, very kinky. And God wants you to have a BDSM relationship with him, according to the queer theologist. And this literally came from the presentation we watched for last week's happy hour, which was crazy. And so that's the type of stuff we do on happy hour. We watch a woke training from start to finish, and we make fun of it, and we have some drinks, and we talk about it, and we learn what's really going on. And people who watch happy hour know more about what's going on the woke left than any other people on the internet. I firmly believe that. You can see an example of our last happy hour there. That stream, by the way, is still on the channel. If you want to go back and watch the last happy hour and experience the insanity as we all did, you're welcome to do that. But I did clip everything for you and break it down really nicely in that article. If you do want to support the work I'm doing, and thank you everyone who sent in the super chats today, I do really appreciate it. But if you want to support the work I'm doing, please consider becoming a monthly or annual member on my Substack. $5 a month, $50 a year. The money I make does get reinvested into doing things that will help expose what's going on the left in ways that, sometimes you need money to do things. It's just the way it goes. But $5 a month, $50 a year, I'm completely funded by you, so I don't have to take money from any of these political shilly organizations that are going to try to tell me what to say and what to do and say I can't talk about stuff on the internet that I want to talk about. Libertarian Party Mises Caucus, fuck you. And that would really help me out. But guys, I'll be back at 5 p.m. tomorrow. Thank you so much for spending some time with me today. I really appreciate it. We'll see you.